Ah, I'm not a candy person. I'm not candy. Nope. Nope.
Alrighty, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Commission meeting, and we're going to go ahead and call it to order. I'll ask you to all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we do roll call, I just wanted to take a couple seconds here or so for a moment of silence. Our longest standing mayor, Ed McAleer, passed away this week. I'd just like to respect him with our silence for a little bit. All right, Molly, if you could do the roll call for us, please.
Sure thing. Alderperson Eicher,
Here.
Commissioner Cahalan,
Here.
Commissioner Hausman,
Here.
Commissioner Jashinsky,
Here.
Commissioner Merrick,
Here.
Commissioner Schultz,
Here.
Commissioner Weiler,
Here.
Mayor Atwell,
Present.
Amy Barrows. Here.
Thank you much. Okay, we'll move on to number 4, minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, citizens' comments on the consent agenda items only. Any citizens' comments on the consent agenda items only? Seeing none, citizens' comments on the consent agenda items are closed. Move on to 6, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the items on a consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. All right, we're on to number 7, public hearing. Public hearing number 1, topic, conditional use amendment for an existing church operation to allow a school and other programming and events. Location, 1100 and 1210 South Highway 83, DLC 078-497-1003, DLC 078-4975, and DLC 078-497-1004. Owner, Andrew Johnston, Elmbrook Church. Applicant, Lynn Retler, Augustine Academy, and Andrew Johnston, Elmbrook Church. Matter, conditional use amendment for an existing church operation to allow a school and other programming and events. Are there any citizens that would like to speak to this public hearing? Are you a citizen?
I'm representing the school.
Sure, we'll call you up after we do the citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments for the public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Move on to 9A, unfinished business. DLC 784971003, DLC, did I miss something?
missed
Public
item
comments,
at 8.
public comments.
Oh,
So this, we did 7, which is the
Yep.
public hearing, and then 8 is the comments on items other than.
oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, citizens' comments for anything else on the agenda? Come on up.
Susie Thompson, 700 Milwaukee Street. Several things. First of all, under new business 10F is Clearview Homes. My husband and I went over their drawings and their proposals, and we're, as neighbors, just living down the street, very impressed with everything that they've done so far and what they're planning on doing. We think it's very beautifully planned, and it's a beautiful setting. So we very much approve, and we know others in the neighborhood are very excited about it. The next item after that, item 10G, as in George. It says the applicant is Ann Johnson. I know she goes by 3 or 4 other names: Ann Taylor, Helen Johns, Helen Johnson. I understood her name was Helen Johnson. So I had a question: if an applicant does not have to use their legal name, for one. The type of property we question. The third item coming up is item 11, Highway 83, the proposal. And this looks like it's just, quite honestly, for in the community, we feel like it's being shoved down our throats. The size of the area to be changed for the building seems excessive. To build that many commercial light industry type of buildings in that volume of land. Residential housing has a limit of how long you wait until you need to do a new roof or you do updates and so forth. It seems that when commercial buildings get to what would maybe be the end of their life, could be in 20 or 30 years. They're very expensive to remodel, so the trend is to walk away from them and go build somewhere else. So our question is, we're here right now, I'm 66, I won't necessarily be here in 30 years, but I could be. If we have that volume of commercial buildings that need to be remodeled in 20, 30 years, what's going to happen? Kids that are going to school right now, going to college, are told what you're going to do in 10 years may not even be a job that exists right now. So some of these buildings may have occupants that don't even exist right now. So the things change in who's going to want to pay to remodel these big, huge buildings. I can see the need along 83 personally and right along 83, but to go in further, that area seems like it's prime development for housing, not for commercial buildings. So I would love to offer to volunteer to free draw the map and do a different format. Not as huge as it is. I know the majority of people in Delafield thought that this was tabled. There were a lot of notices, please come tonight to talk about the development. A lot of people would like to see the format of it to change, not as big as it is. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, who else would like to speak? Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi again, Peggy Matt Seward, 2520 Nagawick Road.
Can you spell your last name again?
Pardon?
Spell your last name?
MAT-SIEWERT. And I wanted to bring up number 11 as well. I've been to a couple of meetings, one that we didn't even know was taking place until last minute. I have to say I'm really disappointed because of the fact that so many people are they don't even want to come to a meeting anymore. They're so frustrated that nobody's listening. And I'm new to the city of Delafield, but I've been in residence of Delafield and the town of Delafield over 30 years. And it's just so sad that our representatives are not listening to the people. And one of the things that when I went on to the website last night, there was a notice in there about minutes, and it was referred that one of the statements was the people in Heartland were not bothered by the industry that they were next to. And 2 meetings ago, we had a representative that was from that neighborhood that said everybody hated it. They hated the light, the noise, the garbage pickups. So I can't imagine anybody would want to live next to light industry. And why do we have to take our beautiful city of Delafield and let somebody else, a developer or an outside person, tell us what we want for our city? You would have to change all your pamphlets because now it's not the country living that we all came here to live for. You know, it's going to have light industry and packed houses. When I did my research for another project, most of the houses, other than the ones that are on the lake, have 3 acres. We had a house down the road that was up for sale, 3 acres. They had tons of people flocking to this house. People want the country, they want the space. They don't want to be roped into a 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre, 1 acre. Maybe redraw the drawings, get some citizens in here, because I think you still should offer that buffer and that country living to at least the outer edge, and then go closer to 83. If you drive down to Mugwanago, people live along 83. It's beautiful. Country living, homes, fences. You don't have to have light industry. You know, people can live, and you can, as a city, we have to manage the money that we have and not rape the rest of the land that we have. We have to really look at our finances, maybe get an outside counsel. Why are we running short? And, you know, I just have those questions. But I would love to be a part of the group that maybe we can have outside people come in and help suggest our visions of what the citizens want. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. Okay, anybody else? I think I saw a gentleman back there. Come on up.
Evening. I'm Jeff McDonald. I live at 2831 Highway 83. I want to talk a little bit about this number 11 also.
Can you talk a little closer into the microphone?
I'd like to speak about this number 11 also. We've lived at our property. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I only want to speak about from Bark River south to Oakwood Church, that area in there, and more specifically the properties that are right on Highway 83, mine being one of them. We've lived there for just about 30 years now. And when we bought it 30 years ago, there was no industrial park across 83. It was all open field. I think it was Geeson Farm. Excuse me, I got a little cold. Anyways, so we were there, we raised our kids there. We had 3 little kids when we moved in there 30 years ago. And then Heartland went and built an industrial park across the street. So all the rural talk I hear, that's been gone for us for 20 years, you know, at least. But yet we're told we can't do anything with the zoning right now with our property. I don't see anybody new coming in with young family wanting to raise them along Highway 83 right there. If you look at our property and the properties I'm talking about, there's nothing around us but the open field. I know we have the people in the back on Nagawicka Road. I'm not talking about that part. I think if that gets developed, you're going to need a big buffer in there along that backside. But if we did something, or you approved zoning on the properties on Highway 83, that change, excuse me, that would affect anyone around us. It wouldn't affect anybody over on Oakwood Road, because you have the church and the park as a buffer. That's like 80 acres, I believe. So they're going to be sealed off from any development along Oakwood Road. The people in back of us on Nagawicka Road wouldn't even know if there was something that went into our property. They can't even see our property from where they live. But we won't be able to sell it the way it's zoned right now. There's not much we can do with it. I don't see a new family coming in and wanting to live in a place that has that much traffic. And it's going to go to 4 lanes someday. It's going to be even worse. So I think I didn't like it when Heartland put in their industrial park. But I understood why they put it in. And I think that's why you're suggesting this for this area. I think it's good for the city. I'm not going to speak about north of the Bark River. I know nothing about that area. So I would just like to say, I think we should do it at least in the area from south of Bark River up to Oakwood Church. And then beyond that, I don't really have much to say about it, but thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Sir in the back?
Thank you, everybody, for letting me speak. Appreciate taking the time. My name is Kyle Leopold. I live at 3801 Campbell Trace. I've been to a few of these commission meetings. I live north of Bark River. Going to the gentleman's discussion a minute ago, I am raising a family north of Bark River, right off of 83. I have 4 children. We just moved there a couple years ago. I spoke recently here how the land where we live is beautiful, and we are really worried about what is happening. We would love to be a part of the discussion of what the zoning change would be. My neighbors, Jim and Cindy Pellegrin, could not be here, and they asked that I read a letter. And if anybody has spoken to Jim and Cindy, maybe apart from you and the commission, but they probably know more about this than anybody else. They have been listening to all the minutes. They have been researching for weeks and weeks. So they are very knowledgeable of what's going on, and they're very concerned. They lived in our area for 30 plus years. And I think that everybody should really listen to what they have to say. I think they have very valid concerns. And I think just the long story short of what I want to talk about is just allowing us to be somewhat part of the discussion. Industrial is a very scary notion for us. So please keep that in mind. So I just want to read a little bit from what Jim and Cindy asked me to share. It's not too long, and just take a minute to read it. Jim and Cindy Pellegrin, 3901 Campbell Trace, City of Delafield, are out of town but wish to communicate in writing that we oppose the proposed land use change for the properties north of Bark River, from agricultural residential to multi-use. Future zoning to industrial or commercial would significantly change the quality of life for the homeowners that surround and border the Sela and Morris properties. We want to emphasize again that you would not consider doing this in your own backyards. If you are being honest, the reason behind not wanting this type of zoning change near your homes include aesthetics, traffic increases, light and noise pollution, safety concerns, and decrease in property values for neighboring homes. During the focus group discussions, Mr. Seatman, along with others in the group, addressed conversations he had with individuals who expressed the desire for more public lake access to get to restaurants and other venues. Maybe the same land use changes should have been considered for lake properties so that when lake properties came on the market, more restaurants or condos can be built on the lake. But again, lake properties are given higher protection and consideration than the country land that we feel is just as important and deserves the same protection. Keep the commercial and industrial along the I-94 corridor, and please protect the beautiful lake country area from noise, traffic, shopping, and commerce that will destroy what Delafield is admired for: large country lots and its beautiful surroundings. Once it is destroyed, you can't get it back, and Delafield will lose its uniqueness and just be another Oconomowoc or Brookfield. The following is our proposal. Keep the properties north of the Bark River agricultural residential with 2 to 3 acre lot sizes in keeping with the surrounding homes. If the Plan Commission chooses to ignore the majority of the citizens of Delafield by voting to change the land use to multi-use, then we request the following: a minimum of 40% green space to include trees, vegetation, and water areas. Only single-story buildings. Businesses that operate under normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and no third shift hours. No retail, no restaurants, only dark sky lighting allowed. That's lights that are shielded to only direct light downward. No high-density residential, especially apartment buildings, or low-income housing. No tract housing like in Pabst Farms. No metal-sided buildings. No outdoor storage of materials or equipment. Some acceptable uses: transitional senior living, golf course community, professional office space that is not leased but owned by one company. Excuse me. One of the functions of the Plan Commission is to protect the properties and concerns of property owners and their properties. Please take seriously those properties, and quality of life will be affected by your decisions moving forward. Please protect Delafield. The citizens of Lake Country moved here and invested here because of the unique appeal of this community. We implore you to protect it. Let us continue to be a unique and beautiful place and not succumb to keeping up with communities that do not reflect what the city of Delafield and our citizens value most. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. All right, anybody else? Anybody else going once? Come on up. Oh, you'll be next. I'm sorry. You'll be next.
Sorry. Jen Costa, C-O-S-T-A, 2500 Hirschman Lane. And I have also been to a few of these meetings. I've felt unprepared to speak, and so made some notes for this round. I would like to kind of piggyback on somebody who went ahead of me, that unfortunately a lot of the residents in our community don't want to come to these meetings because they feel like the decision has already been made. A lot of us have been making phone calls and going door to door and asking neighbors to attend, and the consensus is that the decision has been made and our voices are not being heard and people are not wanting to come and take part in these meetings. I, however, am here, and so here's my notes from today, or the past couple of weeks, I guess, as we've stewed on this. The proposed land amendment is a major shift from the current land use map. The city is basically broadcasting a planned mixed-use category for hundreds of acres north and south of the Bark River, all at once. I and probably most of the residents whose land will be directly affected by the proposed land amendment did my due diligence in researching the land use plan map prior to purchasing our home, and again, we knew the potential for residential development has always existed. As I stated in the last meeting, we're not anti-development. We would welcome new neighbors. But this one foul swoop approach to a very large chunk of land feels negligent. My property and most of the people's property in this room are not compatible, with commercial or industrial development at all, period. The Planning Commission, per our last meeting, could not identify the setback and or proximity of the proposed mixed-use areas from State Highway 83 or neighboring residential homes. You could not say this is how far back the proposed commercial development would be. I can see State Highway 83 from my house. I can see the rustic manor. I can see the church. I can see the park. I can see probably the gentleman's house who was up here earlier. So I would like to know how far that is actually going to be away from my house. I would like somebody to provide that as an answer. And I think that's significant importance. It does not feel appropriate, and again, this is coming from our last meeting, to say the lines could change. That's not okay. The lines should not change once there's a land, amendment. It should be, these should be answers you're providing for the community. Additionally, the more parameters you put on the commercial development as you continue to talk about what you would allow or not allow really kind of pigeonholes you. And it also opens the city up to potential lawsuits. So if you're going to zone it commercial and somebody comes in who meets those requirements, you can't necessarily tell them no. Amending the land use plan does not give the city broad reach of what types of development they can allow, as I was initially led to perceive during our last meeting. That is not true. I don't know what type of parameters are at Village Square, but I would like to note that there is still empty, raw land for sale. That development was fought also by the city for the most part, and I don't know why it has not been fully developed, but I think that's important to note. We've heard from residents on Nagawicca, Oakwood, Hirschman, and Fair Lakes Parkway that traffic is a major concern. Major changes to the land use plan along State Highway 83 will require major updates to infrastructure, traffic congestion, stoplights. I don't care how meandering you make the road from commercial industrial to medium density to low density with speed bumps and roundabouts. Traffic is a major concern, and that's something that nobody has really said, well, here's how we might fix that problem. we're not addressing those issues that I think are really important to the residents on the front end of this, and that makes it really scary for all of us. There's also some fear, I think, from the neighbors and particularly myself, that this development could be detrimental to the market value of our surrounding homes, which could also potentially leads to takings lawsuits. We understand the city is facing a budget shortfall, which makes development attractive, but the deficit is not going to diminish without a properly balanced budget. These developments require a lot of additional infrastructure, police, EMS. You guys talk about school enrollment being down. Pre-primary, which is JK 3, 4, and 5, is at the highest it's ever been, and there's like a 2-year wait for daycares in our area. So if you're going to build commercial along 83, I know you don't want institutional, but that is a need. You want to fill the schools. You guys have Nagawicca Heights, Beacon Hill, Hawthorne Farms, all happening right now. They're all at the very beginning stages of development, 3 major neighborhoods. And we have no idea what that's going to do, like Nagawicca Heights, for example, to the traffic pattern on the top of the farm hill, which is very dangerous. That's not been addressed. Moving forward with this amendment, in our opinion, is hasty, unorganized, and a development that the city is not really in a readily position to take on. If you're listening to the community, we would love to work together for intentional growth. So we're asking you to please vote no on this amendment.
Thank you for your comments. All right, come on up.
Hi, my name's Barbara Rosenthal, Rosenthal. I live at 1901 Price Road. I just wanted to follow up. I thought Mrs. Costa's comments were beautiful and perfect and pretty much everything I wanted to say. I do agree with a lot of people that have been coming in here that first of all, the focus group, which was 7 individuals that were invited, 2 of them are the major developers that are causing all the current development and have purchased a lot of properties. Also, I feel, for me, that's a little conflict of interest as to what the residents really want. Okay, there's not enough residential input on this proposal. And I feel like, again, that people aren't really listening to the citizens. And I have the same problem. Almost everyone I talk to in my area where I live are the same thing. Nobody wants to come to these meetings anymore. They've come before. I've come before. My husband won't even come because he feels like nobody is listening to the residents of Delafield. You know, you say how you need the light industrial and you don't want to put in too many restrictions on them because, as you quoted in the last Plan Commission meeting, that it wouldn't be marketable to the developers. Well, not everything needs to be marketable to the developers. What about the citizens that live here? What about the natural beauty of the trees, of the fields? How about the traffic concerns? How about all the people on Nagawicca Road that drive their kids to school, that go to University Lake School and Lake Country School? You're going to add to that traffic? You think people are not going to go around and find a way to go to Hirschman and Fair Parkway in order to get back ways to get on 83 so they can avoid the traffic nightmare and the lack of traffic lights? That's not going to happen either. They're going to go whichever way they can. I worked at Aurora Clinic and I went the back way so I could come around to the stoplight by Oakwood and 83 just to avoid going out and turning left on Highway 83. I've lived here 26 years and I've never seen such bulldozing all at once for a plan that you were not getting enough citizen input or you're ignoring. Simply ignoring. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the comments. Who else would like to be next? Is there anyone else? Come on up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Vlad Matej, and I live at 2419 Fair Lakes Parkway.
Can you spell your last name?
Sure. M as in Mike, A, T as in Tom, E, J, I, C.
And the address one more time?
I'm sorry?
The address one more time, please?
2419 Fair Lakes Parkway.
Thank you.
I have been attending these meetings as well, just as everyone else that's spoken here over the last several weeks or a couple of months or so in regards to this proposal. And, the common theme is residents. Residents aren't being heard. I don't know why everyone very consistently has the same impression. And yet, the results of what we read in the minutes and so forth are very reflective of that. Is that there is no reflection of what people have been coming in here, the residents have been coming in here to let you know their thoughts. None of that is being reflected honestly and truthfully and transparently in those minutes. And the last time that I spoke here, I talked about stakeholders. You guys are residents, most of you, some of you are not residents, but you've opted to take on these roles that you have. And your obligation as such is to the residents of the city of Delafield first, and then in whatever priority order to the other stakeholders. But we are the major stakeholders in this. And I think that the only thing that people are asking for is an acknowledgement that their view and their points of views and their concerns are valid, number one, and that this process be slowed down. No matter how fast you think you're going with this currently, it's not going to fix your budget issue. And I don't know what is preventing you from slowing down. The residents are making it very, very clear, at least the number one stakeholder is making it very, very clear. We're willing to work with you if you allow that to happen. But slow the process down and pay attention to your number one stakeholders. If there are other stakeholders that are pushing and trying to accelerate this from their perspective, I get it. Business is business. But those stakeholders need to be also pushed back on. Don't just push back on the residents. And that's the easy thing to do. That's the easy button for you guys. It's push back on the residents because they don't really have a voice. Okay? They're not the ones that are coming in with the investments. Please, pay attention to what the residents are saying. Your obligation is to the residents first. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Anyone else like to speak tonight?
The guy back here.
Oh, sure. Come on up, sir. Couldn't see you in the dark.
I'm Dick DiAugustini, 3727 Campbell Trace. It's D' capital A Gostini. So I've been looking at a few things and kind of two sides. One is the voice of the people, which we've heard a lot about, and certainly I think that's should be a strong consideration in this group's decision making. The other is kind of just using simple terms is to make sure that Delafield doesn't turn into Podunk instead of Delafield. And that's, I think, if you don't want to listen to the people, at least think about that you must take that as a responsibility of yours. And putting and mixing residents with industrial developments is really not done. I mean, if you look at, and you guys have talked about the Brookfield's Gateway West, which is probably the best looking industrial park I've ever seen. It's a nice industrial park as industrial parks go. They did it the way that it's supposed to be done. They have major roads, Capitol Drive, and I believe Silver Spring on the one end, blocking it off, cordoning it off. They have a swamp on part of it, and they have a railroad track on the other part of it. They don't have houses in there. There are no houses in there. There's no people that live in that industrial development. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Even Heartland, who, I don't know how and when they did it, but I wasn't here for that. But there are two industrial parks. Their North Industrial Park and their South Industrial Park. As big as they are, there's 2 residents in that entire area. So the question is, well, how many people would be in direct contact with this proposal? In the North development, north of the Park River, there's 16 homes, 16 families, 16, not 0, not 2, 16. That's a lot. There's 8, a minimum of 8. You can actually count more depending on how you want to look at it south. That's 24 homes that are going to be in the industrial park as you propose it. Does that make any sense? Is that how other people have made good industrial parks that work in the environment? I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. I don't understand. I still don't understand why we're here the 4th month and maybe the 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it seems like it would be a no-brainer. You guys have to take the responsibility of the simplest part of your job is not turning Delafield into Podunk or Ocondo Milwaukee, as it's got a nickname as well now. So my another thought was, how much are we paying in property taxes? Is it really that bad? Well, it turns out, from what I find, that Delafield's not doing very bad at all. Heartland has a rate of 4.67. Oconomowoc is $4.71. Brookfield is $5.71. Waukesha is $11.20. These people have industrial parks. Ours is $4.69 in 2021. I don't see the problem. I mean, you ask the people what they wanted. They want the quaint, country feel. They don't want multifamily housing. And we put out the, I forget what it's called, but basically the resolution to up the taxes, and they voted yes for that. I don't know. They've said it, and they proved it. Now, I guess we just need to believe it. That's really what we mean, is that's what we want. We want this to be Delafield. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Anyone else out there? All right, seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed, and we will move on to, for the second time, 9A under unfinished business. DELC 078949710003, DELC 07849775, DELC 0784971004, 1100 and 1210 South Highway 83, owner Elmbrook Church Incorporated, applicant Lynn Ryder, Augustine Academy, and Andrew Johnston, Elmbrook Church. Applicant requests the Planning Commission recommend approval to amend the conditional use permit and business plan of operation for Elmbrook Church to allow for a school and other programming and events. All right, you guys can come on up. If you can give us your name and address to start off with, that'd be great. And then I'm gonna, do you want to go first, or would you like them to go first?
Sure. You want me to give a brief overview and you can fill in the holes?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay.
Name and address, though. So.
Yeah, Andrew Johnston, address is 2822 Ridley Road in Delafield.
Jeremiah Bailing. I'm from the school. I live in the village of Summit by about 3 houses, so just outside of Delafield.
And the address?
34429 Valley Road.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Elmbrook Church has an existing conditional use. They did amend their conditional use earlier this year so that they could operate a summer camp that included a tent that would be put near the parking lot for the summertime. After talking to the applicant through that process, they realized that they needed approval for certain activities on the property, and they have been operating, or Augustine Academy has been operating a school on the property without understanding that they needed the conditional use permit. So they did come in. They are applying for that after the fact approval now. The school has a 4K through 9th grade program. They operate during the normal school year from 7:30 in the morning until 5 p.m. They have 14 employees and 83 students. They occupy the spaces that are shown on this map, if you can see it. The blue space is the lunchroom and the gym. Oops, hold on. The red area, which is on the south wing, is the classroom space, and then they utilize the administrative, some of those administrative offices from the school. The two uses together, the church uses are primarily on the weekends, and the school uses are during the week, so they are quite compatible. As I'm sure you're aware, Elmbrook Church has a significant parking lot, so there's plenty of parking on the site. As part of going through this, and I'll let them explain more, the church is also proposing to just amend their business plan of operation details. Both uses would have some special events. Both of them included a packet of their anticipated special events the church did for the 2023 year. I can't remember if the school, I think, submitted theirs for 2022. But they will have a little bit of overlap in that the church may have some small group settings or meetings during the week that would include about 20 to 30 people, and then occasionally have weddings, funerals, or other similar events. And then at some times they will have potentially, they're asking for partnerships with community groups that could include worship events, conferences, in-service days, and sport practices, and this could lead up to 1,000 people. That would not be in conflict with the school hours. And then at times they also do host outdoor events that could include up to 250 people. And then in their event packet, if you look, they are proposing some soft music. So after they give their presentation, I'll just go through the recommended conditions. There's one condition in there that discusses the events and making sure that we understand what they're doing and when. So we'll go through that in a bit. You guys want to go ahead and fill in
Sure.
blanks?
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for guiding us through this process. Appreciate it. I'm Jeremiah Bailing. I'm a volunteer at the school. We have 3 children at the school, 4 children in all, a preschooler. We've been part of the school for, this is our 6th year now as part of the school. School has been fortunate and blessed to be a tenant with Elmbrook. We are thankful for the relationship. It's a hybrid school. It's a Christian school, so hybrid means that it's not 5 days a week on campus. It's 3 or 4, depending on the grades, and then the other 2 days are at home. We were that way before COVID. We've received some accolades for that. Forbes magazine did a publication on the school, and we've been featured in a couple of books, and we're just thankful to be in this community and to be connecting families and their students, where school and family connect is our tagline. And I think also that certainly extends to the church. We're honored to be a tenant with Elmbrook, but we're also autonomous in that we, out of the 50 families, we have nearly 40 churches represented from the area. So we're thankful to have a diversity of Christian belief within the school, and connecting families with their students and with the school and with their churches and with the community, and hopefully to impact the larger world. So we're thankful again for Elmbrook Church. They've been really gracious to us, and it's a wonderful place to be for students to learn, with the Ice Age Trail there and the nature that's around it. It really is beautiful, and we're thankful.
Yeah, from the church perspective, our mission is to be rooted in Jesus and released to his mission. And as we took a look at TAA and their mission, we felt like there was complementary use in just terms of beliefs and being able to accomplish our missions together. Not only is there a complementary space use due to the times that Amy had referred to, but we do believe that there's kind of a missional alignment that we felt like this organization aligned with. And so we feel like this has, as Jeremiah mentioned, a good partnership that we would hope to continue in the future.
Any questions about the activities that they're proposing in the packet?
I've got one, and I've reached out to some of the neighbors, both in the town and the city, and it's just, and they almost were wondering why I was concerned, because they didn't have any issues with what's been going on when it went on last summer. But the only thing, I don't see it in here as an ask even, but is the only concern would be like amplified music or lights after 9 o'clock on nights without a special event permit or request. And I don't see that even in is that something that normally would go on or no?
Just to clarify what you're asking, you said...
Like, would there be any amplified noise like outside the building during...
After 9 p.m.
Not after 9 p.m., no.
Okay, all right. That's the only thing that came up as far as I'm concerned.
We want elementary kids in
I understand.
beds before that.
I understand. I know the school concerts can get pretty out of hand. But that'd be the only thing I'd want to confirm is that if those were planned activities, that they'd just be something that would go under an approval process.
Yep.
Any other questions? I'm going to go through the recommendations quick.
Okay.
Because I think what the third recommendation may be a little unusual from what you've heard in the past. So the first, I'm recommending approval recommend that staff draft a conditional use amendment agreement to allow the continuation of a church, a school, and other programming and events, inclusive of the below conditions for adoption by Common Council. And the first one is all previous conditional use permits and amendments associated with the church remain in effect unless modified herein. The church and school shall keep an updated business plan of operation on file with the city at all times. The conditional use permit is transferable to another property owner and or operator, provided all conditions of this CU amendment are met. Most recently, the Elmbrook Church, what year did you move in?
2016.
2016 was Westbrook Church before that. So I guess we're saying if it transferred to another church, it wouldn't have to come through the CU, but they would need a business plan of operation. And then the third one that I have in here is a list of events that are just because we don't know exactly what they're proposing or how many people, and that could go up to 1,000 people. I think they're saying outside it would be more like 250. There's a condition that says a list of events that are not inclusive of regular school activities, church activities, or summer camp, which have all been approved already. And so this is, and that exceed 100 people, include outdoor live music, outdoor activities after sunset, or temporary placement of structures not previously approved, shall be submitted to the city clerk for distribution to the planner, police chief, and fire chief at the beginning of each calendar year or at least 30 days in advance of the event for review and approval. If complaints are received or an event is determined by the Plan Commission or Police Department to be a nuisance or safety concern, this approval can be terminated in accordance with Section 52-140 of the Zoning Code. And then I'm recommending approval of the business plan of operations as well in compliance with the CU. So that's a big condition. Understanding they have a capacity the church has a capacity for 1,000 people, so it's something that they see. It's just if they have a large event outside and the police department isn't aware of it or the fire department and something happens, it would be nice for them to have a little heads up. And then it kind of gets to Tim's point of if there is live music or lighting or something, those events can be reviewed.
Amy, where'd the 100 number come from?
I made that up. So
that seems like for the property really that big, that's not a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, you could change it to 250, 500, but it
seems like one little events, you'd already be over 100. And you don't want to. It seems like a low number. Would be my only feedback.
Yeah.
Agree.
What would you think would be reasonable?
Just as a reference point, our attendance on a weekend is roughly about 650. That's split into two services, roughly about 350 people, 150 people in the second service.
And this would only be required for something outside, correct, Amy?
Yeah.
It says if they're not part of their regular activities, church or summer camp. So like the stuff above, they have the small meetings, they have the camp that you approved earlier this year. Those wouldn't be included, but I think they have like an Easter egg hunt or something like that at the beginning of the year. Where so in the packet they already have the list for 2023, for example. That would just be their list if they had any change, because things could come up unexpectedly. Then they could submit that 30 days ahead. And we're not suggesting it has to come to Plan Commission either. It's more of making us aware and doing a quick review.
I'd feel better if that was 400, just from the standpoint. If they just decided that there was going to be an event where they wanted to meet up to carpool with buses or something, you get 300 people there without any kind of a big turmoil or anything. So, I think you just mentioned 50 families or 40 families. If you just decided to show up to do something relatively spontaneous, you'd have 150 people there.
Yeah.
So I think 400 would be reasonable for the parking and all that stuff that they've got.
During the pandemic, we tried to do more outside, and so including classes outside, and we'd like to be over 100 students sometime soon, and and family events. We have picnics outside. They're usually pretty early in the afternoon.
400 sounds like a lot, but in a parking lot like that, I think.
And I'm not concerned about anything that goes on inside their event, their buildings. I'm only concerned about things that would be outside, something out of the norm. We
That's
comfortable
what
with?
3 pertains to, right? Outdoor events.
Well, it wasn't clear when Amy gave me the answer.
But that says or temporary.
Yep.
There's any one of these things. Doesn't have to be outside.
I'm just thinking if they do something on a Tuesday night in the summer outside.
Like if they have an outside Christian concert.
Within a heartbeat,
and they
you're over 100.
Have 500 people there. I think that's worth filling out the event packet and making the city aware. But it should be the one-off, and truly the one-off. Something where there's a lot of people outside, unplanned.
I know, but I think the point is if we left it at 100,
that's way too low.
Yeah.
I think.
So
400.
400 it is.
400.
And are people comfortable with just outside, or do you want to, what were the 3 choices?
The other ones are good. That all makes sense.
Yeah.
Outside.
Just change it
Change
to
the number to
400.
400 and outside?
Then we're good.
Well, I have.
No, just
No,
the way it's said. The way it's
Just
said.
the way it's worded, but change the 100 to 400.
There's lots of leeway in there. It says normal activities, regular school activities. So,
Yeah, I'm talking about
you're gonna have
Halloween thing or Easter hunt or
they don't have to
carnival.
They don't have to list when their parent-teacher conferences are, or when there's going to be, whatever, like a rehearsal
today.
for a play. Yeah,
But if they were to exceed that, that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
Kent, right? That they could fill out an event
Yes.
application.
you get the intent,
It's
right?
not that restrictive.
It's not even an application. It's providing written documentation to the planner,
Notice.
fire chief, or to the clerk, and then it would be sent on.
I'm good with it.
Are you guys comfortable with that?
Just for clarification, we decided on the 400 for outside or for all events at 400?
All events that are not inclusive of your regular type activities.
Okay, and the regular events, we're able to submit those on a yearly basis?
You don't even have to do that. We're not even saying you have to do that. These events that are over 400,
Correct.
you can submit it at the beginning of the year.
And we can do it all
And then you
at
can
one shot?
supplement. Right. You can
Okay.
do it all at once, or
I'm
you
fine
can
with that.
supplement as needed.
Yep.
School's good with that too?
Yeah, we're along for the ride. We're thankful to be here.
All right, I'll make a recommendation that the staff draft a conditional use agreement per the 3 terms in the planner's letter amending item number 3 to 400 instead of 100.
Second.
All right. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you, guys.
What about the business plan of operation?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. There's a second. Just make sure you also approve the
I thought
business.
that was part of number 3, so.
No, it's a separate.
Okay, well, I'll also recommend the approval of business plan of operations subject to the conditions of the conditional use amendment being compiled and subject to compliance with the submittal materials considered at today's meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, 9B, DELC 0803003, 2410 Milwaukee Street, owner Shutter Development LLC, applicant John Shutter. Applicant seeks site plan and appearance review approval for exterior improvements to the structure on the property. Name and address?
Good evening. John Shuter, SHUDER, 2410 Milwaukee Street.
Amy?
Amy, thanks for all your help, by the way.
Sure. So this property is just west of the Smiley Barn. You all know where the Smiley Barn is. It's a multi-tenant building. So Mr. Shooter is proposing to just upgrade the look of the exterior without making significant changes. So he is proposing an additional window space. I didn't know from this picture, what side is it on? Is it on the?
This picture is facing north.
Okay. So this is a north-facing side of the building. And then he's also proposing to paint the siding a blue, and I'll go to that. And then replace the asphalt roof. It will look the same, but with a, what color did you have in there? Onyx black.
It's actually the mansard is a fascia of the building. It's not the roof, so it's the fascia going around the building that's currently cedar, and it would be removing the cedar and then going to the black asphalt shingle.
Okay, thank you for the correction. And is that it? Windows, fascia, and the siding,
and
right?
Paint, and paint, yes, the new paint color.
Painting this, yes,
Correct.
so I'll show you. Oh, stone, Andy's putting stone on.
I'm sorry, yes, that was going to be the current trend of the stone up to the windows, from the floor up to the windows, and then paint from the rest of the way up. And
So I don't know, it's a little hard to tell, but I have my cursor on the color of the siding.
Yeah, the royal blue, or I'm sorry, navy blue.
Kind of a navy blue. This, on the top right, is the color of the roof, so very dark.
It's the black.
Or I'm sorry, I keep calling it a roof.
It just doesn't, I know the picture's terrible. I just couldn't get a piece of that.
And then this would be the stonework at the base of the building.
Should look real nice.
So my report is to recommend approval as requested, and the applicant is aware that he'll need to get a building permit for that window.
Well, I know I'm glad to see you're in here to try to make some improvements to the building.
Yes.
Which we're thankful for.
We've been there for a while, so it's we painted it twice, but I want to change it up a little bit. So
Yeah. Currently it's probably one of our least attractive buildings, quite frankly, in the city.
well, after the new place came in on the corner, we got rid of Perkins. I'm now the sore eye, so yeah. All that brick, the concrete.
The eyeball has shifted.
That's correct. So I'm on it.
So, you know, the cedar shake at least provides some kind of texture, some dimensional attractiveness. To go to asphalt shingle seems like a big downstep as far as quality of materials in my mind.
Well, last year I did come and I got approved for this metal roof, so I did get that upgraded. But with inflation, that has been real tough. That's why I've had to go down to that. I'm not gonna look for approval. I'm not opposed to leaving the cedar there. Don't get me wrong. I would love to leave it there and just do the painting in the windows. But the option of going to something else
Is the cedar failing to your knowledge?
No, I thought that was the part that made the building, as somebody said, looked aged. I thought was the cedar. I had it acid washed so that it looked more symmetrical.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But if you, I made an assumption there, and if you think the cedar's more aesthetically correct next to the Smiley Barn, I have no problem with keeping it there.
I like the cedar.
Yeah.
Great.
And I envision flat shingles on there.
I thought it was old. I thought that was the old part. So if that's not the old part,
But he's going to have stone too, which
Yeah,
will
that looks great
add a
with
nice
cedar.
accent with the stone he's going to have. So that'll kind of
So
accent the
add the window, change the paint, add the stone.
Yeah.
How about some landscape?
Sure.
We'll trade the cedar shingles.
I got it. And where would you like that?
You just saved a lot of money on that black the shingles.
I got the big arborvitaes that are separating me from the residential area, so I didn't want to touch those. And on the other side, I'm bumped right directly up to the Smiley Barn. So I don't have anywhere for landscaping around the building. I've done that where I've got the bushes and the stone in. That was all replaced 2 years ago and goes around
on both sides
of the building. And otherwise, I'm parking lot all the way around the back side and the west side. There's no planter spaces. The arborvitaes are there. And then I do. I mean, I got. I do the landscape. The grass. I love the green grass myself. So I do the grass in the back, and I do the grass on the north end, and I've got grass on the west side.
Yeah.
So landscaping, I'd love to, whatever recommendations you have, I'm not sure. Take down arborvitaes.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the landscaping would be rather expensive in the sense that ideally you'd be creating some kind of island or butt out. What do you have? Basically about 4 feet of dirt around the perimeter of the building itself.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just the L shape of the north side, and the east side has that 4-foot berm to put landscape. And there is landscaping. We had somebody come in and put the short shrubs in because they're underneath the tree.
Right, you don't want anything that's too big.
So underneath the windows, I can't put something that's going to grow up past the window.
Any creative ideas from any other planning commissioners on?
Because I did have a guy come in. I didn't do it. I had somebody come in and a landscaper look at it.
It's kind of locked in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of tough too because you're out in the sun all the time.
The back, the
don't have
freeway
any
side,
trees.
that paint, I can't keep up with that. It just gets so baked on. That's why I'm trying to go more stone from the floor up, because the fact that's where I get a little too much heat off the asphalt, and then that paint is gone on the north side. So I'm all for recommendations. That's why I was trying to improve it with the stone to get a little more texture.
Is there room for some trees in that grassy area to the west?
To the west. Well, if you want to keep going, yeah, because I've got the arborvitaes. I got the arborvitaes going about half.
Oh, there's arborvitaes.
Yeah, that's really separating me from the.
It didn't show there, but I can picture
that's what's
them.
over there.
Yep, there's
So
a row of them.
Yeah, there's a whole row of them there. That's trying to just we're right next to residential, so I'm trying to.
That's the picture.
The big parties we're having outside with 1,000 people. I didn't apply for that yet, but I'm going to go by the church and do it, I think. So I don't. Again, the idea is improvement. That's what the stone would be for the side of the building, and then I thought the cedar was older, but I'll gladly keep it.
Could you get some trees there on that south property line where that row of grass is? It's not wide, but...
The south property line. Are you talking about between me and the freeway?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all trees. I had to trim them down.
Oh, there. I see.
I have to trim them down because of the fact that the signage for the freeway set, that's all trees all along there.
Sure.
So that's green vegetation. It's not.
With the blacktop jungle you got there.
I'm telling you, but I've got plenty of private parking over there. So I'm trapped. That's the way I received the building, and I just kind of try to dress it up.
I think with the update that you're looking to do, it's going to make a huge enough impact right now.
Yeah,
and if anything, taking a look at it and
go
from that point.
That's why I thought if I got everything approved, I could just take a step at a time, which would be the stone and the paint, because it's going to go from that beige earth tones to a navy blue,
Yeah.
and then get the earth tone from the stone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to keep up with Olive Garden. They put up a beautiful. I mean, they put up a beautiful building. It just looks beautiful there, so it's really nice.
Okay, motion to approve the shooter site plan as shown this evening with the exception of leaving the existing cedar shingles along the mansard roof.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you very much for
Thank you very
coming
much,
in.
everyone.
We do appreciate it.
No, thanks. No, I didn't want to pick that up. I want to put red one.
Okay, we'll move on to C, DELC 0753999002, 3115 Highway 83, owner, The Farmhouse 1848 LLC, applicant Whitney. Applicant seeks feedback regarding request to amend the existing conditional use and possibly text of the zoning code for the operation of an existing event facility without a bed and breakfast being the principal use on the property. If the planning commission feels it is appropriate, public hearing may be scheduled. Name and address.
Whitney Schneider, 3115 State Road 83.
And Eric Schneider, same address.
Same.
All right there, Amy.
Okay, so we talked about this use in detail last month, so I won't go over it too much. At that time, though, they did request a rezone to a business district. The Plan Commission did hesitate to move forward with that request, understanding that the overall Highway 83 corridor has not been decided on, and you don't want to make decisions ahead of making decisions for the larger overall area. They had at that time wanted to potentially put in some related retail and service businesses associated with the event facility. So now they are taking a step back and they're willing to operate they would like to operate the event facility as their main use and then open up their residential building for rental or users of the event barn. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But their main goal is that they would like to get some income off of the residential structure, but they do not want to live on the property anymore. And so a bed and they really are not interested in operating a bed and breakfast anymore, which right now the reason why they're allowed to have these facilities is because bed and breakfasts are a conditional use in the zoning code and allowed in the agricultural district. And then the event facility was tacked on to that bed and breakfast as an accessory use. The event facility has turned into a significant operation. I think they said at the last meeting they have over 100 events a year. So in talking to the city attorney, we had both agreed that if they're going to continue the event facility and not have a bed and breakfast, quite frankly, even if they did have a bed and breakfast, it would probably be a good idea for the city to incorporate an event facility conditional use so that it can be the principal use on the property, which is how it's being occupied, if that's deemed appropriate to the Plan Commission. So what I've done here, I won't go through the site conditions again, but I did submit some potential language for discussion. What gets challenging when you create new language is you don't want to have unintended consequences, and be careful with where you do and don't allow these types of operations. Event barns or facilities are commonly conditional uses in a lot of districts. It's a newer thing that's become really popular, and they are often in agricultural districts with renovations to major barns. Because they've been so successful, there are several properties that also build brand new facilities. But I also want to be careful that we don't exclude or require a conditional use for facilities that really are accessory to an otherwise like business use. So we've got the Delafield Hotel, for example, downtown. They have wedding venues there and events. Last summer you approved downtown. There's the small building just south of the Bark River on the east side of Genesee Street. They have really small family weddings outside. So we want to make sure we're not excluding those. And then earlier, I think it was just this year, the gun club came in and they have that event space also. So this is really intended to be inclusive of facilities that operate in agricultural districts. So we're not suggesting they are or are not allowed in other zoning districts. They just need to be provided in that particular zoning district if it's not agriculturally zoned. And so because of that, I changed it to event barn, but it may be better to say event barn or facility because it may not always be in a barn per se, and then you're defining barn, what a barn is. So what I have here is an event barn is a definition in the conditional use section. An event barn, or maybe add facility, is a privately owned location in an agricultural district which includes the use of an existing barn or construction of a new barn/facility, typically rented to third parties for temporary events, i.e. weddings, meetings, conferences, fundraisers, family reunions, etc. The term event barn does not apply to private clubs, amusement establishments, and restaurants, which are already identified in the zoning code as a separate use. And then event venues in districts other than agricultural are subject to the uses and provisions of that particular zoning district and are not subject to these conditional use provisions. Something to just think about there. If this property were ever to be rezoned because of like the Highway 83 corridor, for example, then the question would be, is the event barn approved by right under that scenario, or would they need a conditional use permit? And so we can deal with that now as part of this or as part of any change that would potentially occur as part of the Highway 83 corridor because we're listing out acceptable uses. And then there's a whole bunch of conditions in here. So in order to get approval, access must be provided by a county or state highway. Another option would be to say that it must be provided by an arterial or collector street. The reason why that's in there is you don't want to have a ton of traffic coming in and out of local roads all at once. So, typically at an event like this, you might have 100 people coming and going within a pretty short time frame. No such use shall be permitted on a lot less than a certain acreage if you want to go that route. If you want to be really limiting on where these would be allowed, then we can look at the properties in the city and get pretty specific. No building, structure, and or use shall be closer than 100 feet to the lot line of an adjoining lot located in a residential zoning district. Any type of outdoor music and indoor amplified music shall be regulated by the city at such time an application is made. Restrictions may be placed on the hours, location, volume, and amplification based on potential impacts to the surrounding area. The Plan Commission and Common Council may prohibit music at any time if the noise level becomes an issue. Number 5, only one event may take place at a time. Food shall be prepared and served by a professional licensed catering service, or a restaurant license shall be acquired by Waukesha County Environmental Health Division. All necessary liquor licenses shall be obtained by the City of Delafield. Buffer plantings shall be provided along a property line where there is an adjoining lot located in a residential zoning district, and this buffer shall be intended to screen views, light, and noise from the operation. A landscaping plan shall be submitted with the application for review and approval. A lighting plan shall be submitted for review and approval. Lighting fixtures shall be shielded in such a manner as to prevent light from shining directly onto abutting rights-of-way and adjacent properties. Access drives, parking areas, and other traffic circulation areas must be paved. Overflow grass parking may be permissible if approved by Common Council. Parcels not served by public sanitary sewer shall be served by a code-complying private on-site wastewater treatment system and shall meet all state and county ordinances. Another option there, in some municipalities, they would only allow these types of uses if served by sewer and or sewer and water, if you want to make sure that they're limited to the more urbanized areas. Usually agricultural districts are not in urban areas served by sewer and water, so this is a unique condition in Delafield. It is a responsibility of the applicant to comply with all state and local regulations regarding public health. It is a responsibility of the applicant to comply with all federal, state, and local building codes that apply to public use of the facility. And then outdoor fires may only be permitted within a contained area made specifically for outdoor fires and must be illustrated on the approved site plan. And they must comply with local municipality regulations and local fire department. decide whether or not you want to have that type of use. And then parking on a public road right of way is prohibited. Event hours and maximum number of guests are limited through the review of a business plan of operation for the proposed use. And then lastly, accessory uses must be approved as part of the conditional use and must be compatible with an event barn facility. Accessory uses may include uses in buildings that accommodate farming, residential, or limited service associated with the event use. This condition is intended to get at the, so this is just a text amendment. It is not related to the rustic manor. But this would be the condition that would get at what do they do with that residential building and use, putting specific conditions on whether or not it can have a multiple rental use, a single use, a use that must be tied to the event facility, or can it be rented as a separate structure? That would be part of complying with condition number 17. And if you want to be more specific outright, you could. Limited service, I think we have to be careful there too. At the last meeting, they were talking about boutiques and hair salons and stuff, and that's where the hesitation was. When I say it in here, I'm leaving it a little open-ended for a development to come in and be reviewed only because there are things like the photography associated with the event facility, which truly is part of the wedding or that event. So that would be up for discussion too. How strict you want to get in the actual text. So I guess for discussion, you may want to start with, do you want to develop the event facility conditional use in the code, or do you want to go a different direction? And then if you do, what would the provisions be?
I kind of want to understand this because they are not sticking with the original conditional use because of the operation now has changed. They need to reapply for a new conditional use?
Yeah, so if right now, it's kind of all tied to this bed and breakfast existing. If they want to remove the bed and breakfast, they're going to have to get your amendments or new conditional uses, they run through the same process. So you could either make the old CU null and void and repeat that might be the easier, the cleanest way to do it. Yep. Repeat whatever conditions you still want in it, and then add any conditions related to this new language.
But to clarify, our operations have not changed.
You're changing though from the original B and a B&B. You're going to dropping the B&B.
Right. We're requesting to not live. So nothing has changed, and so we're requesting to possibly change. But not our operation. I guess in your question you asked, since our operations have changed. I just want to clarify. Our operations have not changed.
You've dropped though the B&B.
Well, not yet. Not yet.
But that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Because when you change your operation, this is why you're here, because you're going to change your operation. It should be that the conditional use also changes.
Correct, and that's why we're at. But nothing currently as of today has changed.
They're trying, at this point, they don't know, they were given the rezone isn't going to work. That's what they're trying to vacate the conditional use and rezone it to business and have it be allowed. Yeah. Well, that's not going to go forward, so now they're proposing new language so they can have a CU.
So Amy, just the net of this is they want to be able to move somewhere else and rent the house to the wedding party if need be. Is that the gist of this?
Or other business, or
at a minimum.
A couple of things, yeah.
We're not going to leave if we can't obviously capitalize on income for that space in that building. It just can't sit empty. So the whole point was then to partner it with the wedding venue operation. Yeah. Okay. Our ultimate goal, like Amy said, we don't want to host overnight guests. So ultimately, we don't want it to be a bed and breakfast. Ultimately, we'd really not want it to be an Airbnb. We just would like it to be a regular daytime operation. That's an auxiliary to the weddings. Yeah.
Well, what do you mean by daytime operation?
Well,
I thought it was still
overnight
residential.
stays, that extends. We don't want people there overnight. We don't want to host people overnight anymore. So like a daytime operation such as someone renting it, like I said, bridal party who wanted that extra space for hair and makeup. And we have bridal suites, but wedding parties are getting really big. And 16 girls don't necessarily fit in our bridal suite to all get ready at the same time. So we are frequently running out of space for bridal parties to get ready. So having that option for people to have this bigger area, more space for photos, they're not on top of each other, those kinds of things. So an extra rental to use this extra space. Hair and makeup artists to be able to use that as an extra space to offer trials during the week, and they're a preferred hair and makeup person. So again, these are daytime auxiliary uses.
Associated with clients of the venue.
Yeah.
So that's where that limited service term comes in. It's really associated with the event facility only, not at the last meeting we talked about a beauty salon. It's hair being done for the people going to the wedding.
Wouldn't they have to nail down the hours of operation then?
As part of a business plan of operation,
Yeah.
I think, if I'm understanding that correctly, I mean, that is, we're saying only ancillary retail use in there to the existing event barn. We're not saying an independent hairdresser can rent that building and have clients from outside. Am I understanding that correctly?
Mm-hmm. It would just be somebody coming to do their hair for the wedding. That's what it would be.
I mean, so again, let's say, so some of our conversations have really focused on very specifically beauty, hair and makeup, we'll say, because that's probably one of the biggest in and outs that we have come through for preparation. We have a preferred list of caterers, for example. We have 7 people on this list. We have very intimate business relationships with these people and trust the services that they offer our clients. And in turn, we have marketing partnerships and all kinds of different things that we have with these specific other businesses that don't operate on our site, but we have this very close working relationship that benefits us, that vendor, and our clients. So with hair and makeup, the current really strongest idea that seems to not only fit the operation of the wedding, but also we feel would appease what you're looking for operation would be to offer a similar situation with hair and makeup artists, possibly 3 or 4 companies who would be on this preferred list, that they would have access to this space, and they could, let's say on a Monday, offer a makeup trial, which, to clarify, women want to test run everything prior to wedding day. So a couple months before wedding, they come in and they do an hour or 2 of just practice. And yes, I like this. No, I hate that. All that kind of stuff. They need a space to do that. A lot of hair and makeup artists, believe it or not, operate this out of their home because salons offer chair rentals for colors, cuts, all these things, perms that hair and makeup artists just don't need for that. So the cost is so much greater and it doesn't benefit them. So a lot of them do operate out of their home. Us offering a space where they could, during the week, have a clean, beautiful space that they can use for these trials, and then having us as this bigger venue recommend them very specifically to our clients would be really helpful for them, but also really helpful for us. However, they might have clients at Fate down the street. That person should be able to have their hair and makeup trial because that person has access to our space as part of our agreement to be able to do a trial on a Monday at 10 o'clock. And so that would have outside. So limiting that kind of thing to only our clients, it helps us in a sense, but it definitely isn't appealing. After talking to multiple hair and makeup artists, if they can't have clients for other weddings at other places come in and do test runs with them, and they're still working half out of their home, but then half the time here just for our people, it doesn't benefit them. So we're back to kind of dead in the water with that idea. We kind of have to have that outside group coming in. There's not a lot of ideas aside from us being forced into continuing hosting people overnight that allows us to make money, that sensible money, for us to leave. It really is hand tying by saying that they can't have clients that are not our clients. And we're talking very minimal traffic. We do meetings Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday. We have traffic during the week, all week long for our clients. I've actually had people who wanted to do a hair and makeup trial in the bridal suite because they wanted to know exactly what the lighting would look like with everything that day in the space. So, this traffic is pretty standard for us already.
But okay, so you're talking about bringing in different, I guess, service providers. Nobody's going to put a sign out front that says, Mary's hairstyle or something like that.
Not like you would picture like a salon, but I think for us as, the host of someone who is renting a space from us, it would be only appropriate to be able to tell clients who are coming, to the farmhouse this way to see this person, some sort of small signage would absolutely be appropriate because otherwise there's 2 buildings on site. And we really want to make sure that people are being directed in the appropriate way. So if there's a client who's coming in to tour the venue, we want them to know, to this building with an arrow that way for tours or what have you. But for here, like a trial by Teresa's makeup, arrow this way. So I do think signage would absolutely be appropriate on the property near the parking lot, near the walkway. When it comes to the front of the road signage, I guess I hadn't really pictured additional names and signs and, like that kind of thing. But I do think it's appropriate.
I don't even think we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I guess I heard, different, like you have different caterers, you may have different stylists.
Yeah.
I don't know how you
they don't operate on site. Yeah. Their home base is somewhere else.
Right.
Yes.
I was kind of wondering.
Yeah.
So I wasn't here last month, but in the notes it said 3,200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks like a lot bigger structure.
That's the farmhouse, not the building behind it.
Okay.
Yeah, the venue is much.
No, I know, not
Yeah.
the barn.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the original farmhouse and then the extension to the north.
The
That's just
original
3,200.
the original
Okay.
farmhouse. And so that idea of, having a list of, we've got 3 usable bedrooms that we use and 4 if you consider one's quite tiny. Those could be, if we're talking about having 3 different preferred, let's say, hair and makeup artists, each one of them would have a bedroom or a private lockable office space so that their personals, their things like that, like they would have privacy so that people wouldn't be able to go through their stuff. So it just kind of makes sense in that sort of rental kind of aspect. We talked to a lot of vendors, a lot of people who are in the industry, from photographers to DJs, and there's not a lot of interest in other people utilizing the space. Hair and makeup has got a lot of interest.
But to be clear, it would not be a salon like you go to Craig Burns or something. It's
Yeah.
not that kind of setup.
Yeah.
It's specifically wedding related.
Yeah, you're talking hour-long appointments to test run hair and makeup.
My overriding concern is, as we go to the topic later in the agenda, part of the discussion there is no retail, right?
Right.
And so I want to make sure that we're consistent with both our applicants here as we have that discussion.
Yes. So what I'm understanding is that instead of renting out the rooms as a B&B, you're going to be renting out these rooms to different people that do hair and makeup, that type of thing.
Yeah, we don't want overnight stay. I guess our concern is that extension after an event ends at midnight. There's no way to control how the extension into the home continues. We'll say. We don't want that.
Yeah, and you have to worry about
Yes.
Trash the place.
We worked really hard on that house to restore as much as possible, and we really want to keep it pretty.
Yeah. Okay. With no one on premise, how is security going to work for the property?
First, there are cameras already absolutely everywhere, so we always know what's going on.
Each tenant would have, an access code, some sort of keypad lock.
They're already on all the keypad locks already.
Right, and they
Everything's
would have-
time-stamped.
They would have to be on property, of course, to let their client in.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that, I think, is already a normal operation. If I wanted to look back to see who entered what door at what time, I can see that because it's all time-stamped.
Okay.
Yeah.
I worry more about fire break-ins That type of stuff is what I.
I can say our system already accidentally tells us there's fires every now and then that wake us up in the middle of the night when there's not. So it's pretty, it's pretty sensitive.
Yeah. Okay.
So 3,200 square foot, I thought I heard, and we're talking one, I'll use the word ancillary retail service of a hair salon. Are they going to use all 3,200 feet, or what are we talking about for other people that would be ancillary services that you are talking about? Is it just hair and makeup?
I think we're really focused in on that because it seemed as though just other ideas weren't well received. We don't want to really cross over. You know, if we're looking at photographers coming in and using the space, it would just be photographers. We're not looking to mix, you know, one vendor with another. And having, you know, if you, I don't want to say salon because it's not a salon, but just picture that setting for a moment. These are all people who operate their independent, you know, operations. That's the same exact operation under one roof. So it's the same exact concept
More
of
of
that.
shared space.
Just shared space of independent operation. Yeah.
I think I hear a consensus between the applicant and the planning commission kind of on that. Do you hear a consensus of how to word that, Amy or Tim?
Well, I mean, right now, I just want to remind everyone, we're getting into pretty deep details with their use. This is just the text amendment for the code, which can affect any property in the city. So we have to always hesitate to get too focused on this because this could affect other properties also.
Right.
And then that condition number 17, I would just be really careful about how that, something like that would be written, depending on how you feel about what they're proposing. Because it's a good example of what might come up.
Mm-hmm. It's been I've read many articles in other towns and cities and that where it's really stirred up a lot of controversy when it comes to operations such as this.
What, the event facility or the?
Yeah.
I mean, as far
Either
as that
you like
goes.
it or you don't.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, they have been operating for quite some time.
It exists. So I am kind of stuck on number 17.
Let's simplify.
I have a hard time. Well, I have a hard time distinguishing between a salon that rents chairs to independent beauticians at their hours by appointment only, and what you're suggesting. Understanding it sounds perfectly appropriate, and I trust your operation. But it's leasing space for retail operation it's just how it keeps we're using 1,000 words to get to the same thing in my head, and I'm wondering how we would be able to that's the sticky point of this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how we could tackle that to make it specific.
Wedding prep only, and I think this gets covered in the business plan of operations, right?
Need to be some magic there. I like everything else about this as far as how it could. So this is for conditional uses that could apply anywhere in the city for an event barn facility application.
For an agricultural district, it's not really intended to get to the business districts.
But the other things about where you said things could, if we rezoned, it would just be it'd be an existing non-conforming.
Yeah, on their
business
property.
use on their property.
How would it if it were to be
this
rezoned?
county told us we own that, the state told us we own 83 now or whatever. I mean, those things would be in existence, sort of like 7Cs was zoned out of being they're restricted to what they can do based on.
Yeah. So the Highway 83 language, the way the special use area is designed now, says that existing uses can remain, and so there would be no intent in that to take away what's previously been approved.
And if there was some zoning change or land or land use change that came along 83, it could possibly only be to their benefit if they wanted to pursue the retail thing, if those uses were permitted later. But there needs to be some magic
you could this
to
limited
occur as far as making what they're proposing as far as leasing the space to several people doing business not necessarily directly associated with their facility to their private contractors. And maybe it's just that type of language. I don't know what it would
What
be.
I would say we could do so that we can move on, if you don't have any other issues beyond 1 through 16, I could take 17 and discuss that with the city attorney and understanding your intent, see if she has some better language that could be incorporated. And then the next step would be to potentially schedule a hearing to amend the text, and I could bring that modified language as part of the public hearing. It could be we could just talk about it again during the public hearing or following the public hearing. And then they can't apply for a modified conditional use until this text is in place, because it doesn't exist. So they'll have to wait until this text would be incorporated.
The only comment I have is I remember the border agreement. There's no retail, period. How
It's
do we get around
limited.
that?
That's not. It's limited to certain areas, including. So there's a couple different things. Village Square is highly restricted as part of that settlement agreement, and then Nagawicca? Sorry, I'm so used to Nagawaki Park. Nagawicca Dairy Farm is restricted to residential, and then the rest is there's like the Village of Heartland needs to be notified of any change in use and stuff like that, but I don't believe.
Yeah, we looked. I didn't see any restriction for ours specific.
And I don't think they're proposing retail.
No, I think the word retail, I mean.
That's where the confusion comes in for me, because I understand what it is that you want and what I think of as retail, but I'm wondering how we define that.
Yeah, it's not a shop where you would walk in and look at something off of a shelf.
It's a service.
Service
It's a
provider.
service,
That-
yeah.
It's a tough one to word. I know what they're getting
Ancillary.
at. I can't come up.
Yeah.
It is, but
And I
it's
think-
related to what the event center, event facility
Ancillary
does.
to the event center.
But,
Yeah.
but
which
it's
is-
not just with that event facility.
Yeah.
So
And
they
I-
can do it for other events,
Yes.
facilities. So that's where it's hard to come up with
Yes.
that.
Right.
But I don't really look at it as retail. If it has to be by appointment and it's a service provider by appointment.
Well, so is
Which
any
is why we
salon.
brought the rezone, I guess, originally as part of it, because it got more cumbersome doing it this way versus the initial rezone to not have, there was, I guess, a reason that we were kind of looking at the rezone part with it, because that did take care of a lot of this back and forth. How do we, and again, just because everything that we do today, you know, we're a quarter booked for 2024. So even again, if everything were to be approved today and go for it, we still have to operate a bed and breakfast for the next year and then a couple of dates in 24. We're really, really restricted so far out, because we have contracts that far out stating you can stay in the house. So that's kind of why we were approaching this a little bit sooner, from when your larger discussion of the whole Highway 83 corridor is, so that we can plan our lives a little bit further, or we can just kind of make that plan. And booking season for us is going to get nuts in about a month. So 24 will fill up come January. And then
So I like Amy's idea, talking to the attorney, working on that number 17.
Yeah.
Seeing what we can do.
So if you make a motion and you're prepared to accept a public hearing, you could schedule a public hearing for November, or I could come back with modified language and schedule a public hearing for a following month.
I think we better schedule a different month and
Yeah.
get what you bring to the November meeting.
Bring it one more
Yeah.
time without a hearing?
Yeah,
It's not like they're.
Well, if we schedule,
because that could cause another public hearing possibly.
Right.
Or I don't know how that works. If our
well, you can always push the public hearing out.
Yeah.
You can
Right.
keep it open for multiple
Okay.
meetings, or you can.
That's true.
It's up to you.
If we have everything we need in November, I just assume.
Are you sure we're gonna?
No, but if we don't. We just push it out to the following meeting.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is we may play around with this language multiple times, and without a public hearing, you may not hear from the public concerns that you may not be considering right now, which would change the language yet again. It's kind of nice to have the public hearing. It doesn't mean you have to decide and act at that meeting either. You could bring it back to a future meeting.
Okay.
Let's do the public, let's
makes
schedule a
sense.
public hearing for November. Move to schedule a public hearing for November for the rustic manor or for this text amendment regarding event barns.
For the quick,
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
unrelated to the public.
Discussion?
Yeah, okay. The question then, you mentioned earlier about, where it says event barn to add facility, I would suggest that everywhere through the document where it's just barn to say facility included.
I agree.
I know you talk about access point, county and state, also probably include an arterial street to be more specific in case it's not a county or state access point. You mentioned about no less than a number of acres. Would it be appropriate to say no less than 10 acres? I don't know what that might.
I could show you, so you don't have a lot of agricultural lands left, so I could bring to the meeting how many lots would be 10 acres or more, how many lots would be impacted.
Okay.
That would be on a county, state, arterial collector, and have 10 acres. And then you'll know.
Right.
Are we putting the county and state to try to restrict it to just this area? Or
The idea there, that's a provision that's in other codes. So some of this language is taken from other codes with the purpose of not overloading local streets that don't have through traffic when you have, because these types of uses, similar to churches, have a significant amount of traffic that comes at a single time, not throughout the day.
So if we leave the word Collector Street out, then you couldn't build one of these with access via Collector Street.
That's right.
Like Nagawicka Road.
Right. Do you want to add Collector Street so there can be more opportunities for these?
That's kind of how, I don't want to say more opportunities, but I don't want it to shut the door on something that might be current in case, I don't know if
This is the
it would
only one we
conflict.
got.
Okay, then it's easier. Then I wouldn't include it then.
I guess the only question that I have is our access is currently on Highway 83. If it is going to be developed south of us, it's an extension of Walnut Ridge, and that no longer is off of Highway 83. It becomes
That's a great point.
a private road, or not a private road, but
we asked you to do
now,
that.
we were very specifically had to do that road. So
You remember that like yesterday.
I remember it very well.
So would that wording all of a sudden not give us access to operate the
It'd be
Could say close proximity to it.
No, I think Tim's right.
It'd be existing
can-
use. I mean, it'd be.
True. It is there.
So is there consensus we do not want Collector Street included?
That's so hard
You can
to
always
say because
change.
you
You can always change the code later, but that's the risk of putting language in like this is you could have unintended consequences, and the more you allow, the more unintended consequences you could.
And so keeping Collector Streets out is the conservative approach.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And leaving 10 acres in is good. I don't know if you had a number there or not, but
No, I did not.
so we don't we have a motion for a public hearing?
We-
Is that all we have?
We did that, didn't
We
we?
didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote
No,
on it.
we were in
Right.
discussion.
We're in discussion.
Amy, any other clarification you need?
No. I guess I'm going to take that back. There's the condition about sanitary systems, pouts. Do you want to require sewer and/or water? And then it wouldn't apply to sites served by a septic system. So on these barn properties, like in the town of Oconomowoc and I
We
think there's
had
some in
to
Martin,
do that.
they actually bring portalets onto the property because they don't have proper sewage.
Yeah.
So
What do you
this
currently
would
have?
We had to hook up to Heartland Sewer, which was
Yeah.
very expensive.
We had
So this would limit it, it would be another way of limiting it to a particular area, if that's what you're
Well, I think
interested in.
it should be in a sewered and
Yeah, I
watered
don't-
area.
I
So
don't
I
think
can-
water's necessary, but
But
sewer.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Sewer,
So-
anybody think we should have water? Okay, it's just sewer. Okay.
And then the outdoor fire one, do you want that in there?
That's appropriate.
Okay.
You say you have to comply with the other local ordinances?
Yes.
We've got those very, very specifically written.
Yes.
They're quite restrictive. There's no bonfire.
If you want a big bonfire, you can call the fire department and get permission.
Alrighty.
Good.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 10, new business. A, DLC 0742058. No address. Owner Hawthorne Development LLC. Applicant John Seatman. Seatman Realty. Applicant seeks final plat approval of the Hawthorne Farm Addition development.
Jim Seatman, West 240, North 1221, Pewaukee Road, Waukesha.
Amy, you want to give us the overview?
Okay, so this is the addition to Hawthorne Farm. Hawthorne Farm Phase 1 is all the infrastructure is in place and buildings, houses are being constructed. This phase is on the south side of the road. It has 13 lots. You have previously approved the specific implementation plan and the preliminary plat, and now they are seeking final plat approval so that they can start selling lots. Our review is inclusive of some very minor comments, so just some adjustments to notes. Waukesha, and then there's a comment that they have to receive Waukesha County and State of Wisconsin approval for the plat. We did just get the Waukesha County approval. Again, there's just some very minor comments. And then they are going to be sending specific easements for the path on Phase 1, and then drainage and emergency access path easements that'll go to Common Council with the final plat. The surveyor, again, has some very minor note or type changes that would need to occur, and then the engineer does not have any comments other than those related to the easements getting recorded. Fire chief does not have any comments. They do have an emergency access onto Nashotah Road.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Any questions from the commissioners? And looking for a motion for approval in this.
Motion to recommend to the Common Council approval of the final plat for Hawthorne Farms Addition 1, addressing all comments of any objecting and approving authority and subject to compliance with the planner, surveyor, and engineer comments noted above. If any public improvements are not completed prior to the city signing the final plat, a letter of credit shall be submitted in accordance with city standards prior to obtaining signatures.
I'll second, and I'll also just comment the way that you're sculpting the terrain and the retention ponds looks great.
Thank you.
And the fencing and everything, it's beautiful.
Alrighty. Hearing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you very much.
He's staying. He's
Okay.
He's on at the next. He's
Oh,
got the next.
there you
item.
go. Okay, 10B, DLC 0742054, no address, owner landowner Hawthorne Farms, applicant John Seatman, Seatman Realty. Applicant seeks an amendment to the specific implementation plan to allow for a driveway entrance and limited parking that accommodates the barn on Outlot 1 of Hawthorne Farm. Amy.
Okay, so this, going back to Phase 1, the applicant is requesting to modify their specific implementation plan. The reason being, you approved the barn as part of that phase. They did submit their plans, went to the state of Wisconsin, and the state required accessible parking and a bathroom in order to comply with, was it commercial building code that they needed to meet because it's open to multiple lot owners. And because of that, that triggered the need for safe accessibility by the fire department. So they went ahead and started the improvements thinking that they were requirements and wouldn't need our approval again, or your approval rather. So you can see on this aerial photo, and it's sideways on here, but pretty much you can see where the access is off of Nashotah. It cuts through there's just an opening in the gate, or fence rather, and the trail system. And then they have the two spot parking pad, one with accessibility, and then a little turnaround so that emergency vehicles can get in and out, and then a little walkway to the barn itself. So the one challenge in here is that the developer's agreement, after reading that for phase one, says that no parking is allowed at all. And I think that's because when they originally came in, we didn't want it to turn into an event facility.
Right.
So wanted to limit the accessibility to that from the public. So my recommendation is for approval, although section 111.h.3 of the developer's agreement would need to be modified to allow for the limited parking and an access drive to the barn as required by the state of Wisconsin. And then we would also, for our record, like to have the site plan, a note on the site plan, the formal one for phase one, that says that the homeowners association is responsible for maintaining accessibility for emergency vehicles to the barn year-round, including maintenance, repair, and snow and ice removal. The fire department is insistent that they have access to the building year-round.
Any of that new to you?
Nothing's new. Just a couple of comments. One is we not only had to put one bathroom, we had to put two bathrooms in by the state. And so it forced us to hook up the sanitary sewer, put the well in, put the bathrooms in. It's been a huge cluster of a mess for us, but we're willing to do it. After considering the facility, it's only going to be used spring, summer, and fall. It's a metal building. It has no insulation, no HVAC to it. So our only concern with the staff recommendation is they're asking us to plow the driveway up to the building in a time when we're not going to be able to use the building at all. And I'm just worried about the cost and expense to the future property owners for something that, if it's not occupied, why should we have to maintain the road? It's a metal building, so it's pretty hard to burn down. So I just ask for reconsideration on that item. We have looked at the parking. I think it makes sense if somebody is handicapped, they can at least get up there and get in. And we put the second spot in, and that was in consideration. What if they're having a birthday party or a gathering? They want to get some food up there or some supplies up there. It kind of makes sense to be able to get a car to it, drop things off, and take them out. If the Plan Commission was worried about people parking up there continually, I think we would be happy to cordon off the driveway and only use it for those simple access points, put a chain across it. We didn't preconceive that we were going to do this. Just to Amy's comment, that was actually the construction road to build it, and that's the only reason the driveway was there, was for construction. We're planning to take it out until we got the note from the state. So,
Is there a culvert pipe in there, Jim?
there's no culvert.
Does it require one?
No.
No? Okay.
No. It basically drains off toward the road there. There's no drainage down the ditch. It's a high point.
Got it. Then would these bathrooms be winterized?
Yeah. We set up the whole well system so that we can drain it for wintertime.
Is it fair to assume that, say, the homeowners association came in and wanted to make improvements to the barn, that then we would require the snow removal? Because they would be making it more year-round?
I think it's a very fair comment, Mayor, that absolutely, if it's occupied in the winter, it should be maintained in the winter. So I wouldn't have any hesitation to that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right if they're not going to be using, if it's shut down for the winter for snow removal.
Right.
If that's, not necessary at that point. The only thing I'll say is if it's necessary for, EMS for some reason to get up there during the winter, that's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll be kind of driving that issue to make sure that that's taken care of.
So I don't really know the purpose. The fire chief was on vacation when he responded, but I did tell him that it was not winterized and not going to be used in the winter, and he said that that was even more reason for wanting access to the building. Just want to make sure I fully share the comments of the fire department. I don't know exactly why.
Well, I'm assuming a
Because the
fire in there in
fire.
the wintertime. It's
Yeah.
timber framed, right?
No,
with
it's not.
Steel siding.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
steel
timber
siding,
framed,
timber
so
frame.
that's, I'm sure that's what he's getting at, is
right.
somebody gets in there and starts a fire inside.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I see why they want to have access to it then at that
Yeah.
point. Because that setback is 125 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to be aware, though, you didn't require access to it at all
I know.
as part of
Yeah.
the program.
I don't want to participate in the state's punitive letter. I mean, but I mean, I have a hard time going against the fire chief. We don't have a.
Yeah.
Maybe you could make it subject to the applicant corresponding with the fire chief. And maybe the fire chief needs to understand.
That makes sense, because I am.
Revisit that with the fire chief.
I'd be happy to.
I mean, Delhart and the city will take your sewer connection money.
They did.
And, and you're leaving the road there that you already paid for, so you don't have to pay to remove the road. But I don't get the whole thing. So
Yeah.
how about so I'll make a recommend approval of the proposed modification to the SIP, which includes the amendment to the site plan, the first phase of Hawthorne Farm, inclusive of the driveway and parking stalls for access to the barn on Outlot 1, subject to the condition number 1 here, section 111.h.3 of the developer's agreement for phase 1 shall be modified to allow for limited parking and access drive to the barn as required by state of Wisconsin. The approved site plan on file shall state that the homeowners association shall be responsible for maintaining accessibility for emergency vehicles to the barn, contingent upon the fire chief's requirements based on the seasonal nature of its use.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for keep sending those updated pictures all the time. It's very helpful, the developments.
Yes.
All right, 10D, DLC 0783006, 1425 Weber Court. Owner,
You missed one.
You missed.
oh, did I miss one? Oh, I'm sorry, I'll back up
I'm
to
trying
C.
to get out of here.
DLC 07819899004 and DLC 07819899005. No address, owner ABC Rental LLC, applicant John Spheres. Applicant seeks final plat approval of Naguaca Heights Development.
Okay, similar story. The applicant is requesting final plat approval. Earlier this year, you want to give your names and addresses?
I'm Alex Spheres, 175 East Wisconsin Avenue, Oconomowoc.
Rob Davey, Lake Country Engineering, 970 South Silver Lake Street, Oconomowoc.
Okay, so they're proposing final plat approval. They did receive preliminary plat and specific implementation plan approval earlier this year. They have also started construction and are pretty far along with their project. The final plat matches the preliminary plat. There are some notes that I have in the staff report. Again, they're very minor in nature, and they actually just submitted a plat, revised plat this week for me to review so that they can get on the next Common Council agenda. They too may need some easements that need to be drafted and approved by Common Council. They do not need to come back to Plan Commission. And then their review or approval would also be subject to Waukesha County and Department of Administration review and approval, which they are waiting for those comments. Surveyor, again, has some very minor note changes that need to be made on the plat. And then the city engineer is just suggesting that the easements will need to be reviewed and approved. The stormwater management plans and maintenance agreement have already been approved by the Common Council. So same recommendation as Hawthorne Farm.
Anything you gentlemen would like to add?
You just at some point need some clarification on who these easements go to and how we create them. It's the first time I've
Yeah.
seen it for anything other than like a public utility. The
So-
storm sewer easements, I understand, they get granted to the city. But the outlots for the stormwater maintenance agreement, isn't that the homeowner's responsibility, which states on the plat?
So the engineer that's been working on this for Hawthorne Farm has been on vacation for the last couple of weeks. He just returned, I believe, today. So he's going to be giving me the final documents for Hawthorne Farm tomorrow, and then I can share those with you so they
Okay.
can be corrected. It's my understanding that the city's attorney wants to have every easement recorded as a separate document outside of the plat, even though items that are dedicated to the city can be officially documented through a plat. They want all that language that's tied to it recorded separately.
All right.
It's easier to find in a title search than to find that on a plat. But I'll talk you through that tomorrow,
Okay.
hopefully.
Any questions for the applicant? Well, I'd just like to thank you for all the hard work you guys have done up there. I know of a number of concerned citizens throughout the project that have reached out to me and/or you, and you guys have been very responsive in getting back to them and answering their questions to their satisfaction, mostly just an understanding of what's happening close to their property. To my understanding, they've all been resolved. And I'd also like to thank you for a couple of people have sent me pictures of the horse trail that you guys redid. It looks really well. You did a nice job setting up draining from what I can tell. That path, which has been problematic for the horse travel for many, many years, appears to have a very good long-term fix in there. And I know that wasn't something you guys were necessarily eager to do up front, but it's certainly going to pay off for the citizens of Delafield, either walkers or people on horses moving forward. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll make a motion to recommend that council approve the final plat upon addressing all comments of any objecting and approving authority and subject to compliance with the planner, survey, engineer, and fire chief comments as noted above. If any public improvements are not completed prior to the city signing the final plat, a letter of credit shall be submitted in accordance to the city standards prior to obtaining signatures.
Just like the one I made.
I know.
That's really good.
We're well versed.
I'll second.
Got a second? Okay. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to D for the second time. DELC 0783006, 1425 Weber Court. Owner, can you help me with the last name? Majabi. Family Trust, applicant Chris Seatman. Ascent LLC, applicant seeks approval to the consent or construction of a boathouse on the property. Your third time today.
Yeah, third time.
I think Chris and John got off real easy here. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so this property is on the east shore of Lake Nagawicca at the end of Weber Court. The applicant is proposing to build a home right now, and they are coming to Plan Commission in order to build a boathouse. The boathouse would match, as you can see in this rendering, the materials and design of the residence. It is, let me just go to just so I can explain this. It is the proposed boathouse. The building inspector reviewed the plans. It complies with all building area and dimensional standards. It is in the mapped sewer easement by Delhart. But if you read, I did talk to Scott Luzak with Delhart, and also if you read their easement language, the map is just a depiction. The true easement is offset. I believe it's 15 feet from the center of the pipe, and they do meet that provision, and Delhart has approved it, just in case you're confused by the multiple lines there. The boathouse, let's go back to the plans. The boathouse will have some downcast lights on it, downcast dome lights. On the lake side, there'll be one on each side of the garage doors, and then there's also, or overhead doors, I guess you could say. And then there'll also be one on the side of the doors on the east and south sides of the boathouse. So the east side being behind the building, I believe. And then the south side being where the door, do I have that right, or is it the north side? Yeah, it's the north and east. I think I put in my report south and east, but it's the north side. There's a door where a light would be. They are proposing a 358 square foot, 8-inch deep rain garden. It does comply with the DNR standards, and they have the appropriate density and density and type of vegetation. There'll be 16 different species of plants, and grasses will make up 40% of the composition. The Lake Welfare Committee did review the boathouse earlier this month. I did include the minutes. They recommended approval. So just to refresh, I know we've had a couple of these recently, but Plan Commission's action or consideration is supposed to be specific to the location, architectural design, color, and material to be used, and compatibility with the principal structure. Also the rainwater remediation, buildings on adjacent properties, the lakeshore setting, and the neighbors' comments, and Lake Welfare Committee recommendations. So a couple notes, the boathouse, and if you go through your packet, I can go through it too when I'm done here. They submitted pictures of the surroundings. It's located on the opposite side of the adjacent property to the north, and it is not in direct view of the lake from that residence. The boathouse is located at the base of a very steep hill, and the residence on the adjacent property to the south is approximately 50 feet higher, so they should not be impacted by the location of the boathouse. They also have a boathouse very close to the one that's proposed. And let's see, I believe that's it. The only other comment I would make is it's very close to the floodplain elevation, so the applicant, and I've already talked to them, wants to be really careful that they don't grade into the floodplain or suddenly the boathouse is going to be in the floodplain and then they're going to be potentially held to insurance and flooding. So my recommendation is to approve, subject to building, electrical, and plumbing permits prior to commencing any construction. They will have a sink, but no other plumbing in the boathouse. If the sink is proposed, a property owner shall obtain an additional dwelling unit equivalent for the plumbing, and no bathroom facilities are allowed. Illumination from the lighting shall not extend beyond the property boundaries and shall only produce downcast light, and the rain garden shall be installed and planted prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit.
Mike, anything you want to add?
Yeah, a couple things. I'd be remiss if, yes, Lake Welfare did unanimously approve it, but 2 points came up that we couldn't do much about. One was just looking at the picture that's up on the screen, I have a hard time, we collectively had a hard time envisioning any boat residing in that building. Boathouses are supposed to be for boats. They're not supposed to be a party house or another apartment or something else near the lake. There's nothing we can do about it. They filled in everything. They covered everything they were supposed to. But when you looked at that picture, it's like it just looked like another apartment. The other concern, which is somewhat, unrelated to Lake Welfare, but I had personally many people come to me and say they were so concerned about the property because it was clear cut. It looked like every tree on the property was cut down. You could see the property from almost anywhere on the lake. We don't know what to do about it. I sent some email over to you, Amy, talking about what the zoning can maybe do with residential and trees. We deal a lot with commercial and trees, but nothing with residential and trees. And what's done is done, but just it raised a lot of questions and concerns. So with all that, we still unanimously approved it.
And on that note with the tree cutting, we are working through a process to get environmental corridors mapped. And once they're mapped, they can be the amount of tree cutting on a property can be regulated, or we'll bring it up for discussion. So hopefully that'll be done over the winter season.
Just for the record, we were not involved with the property
Assume so.
when it was detreed.
I'd have to say too, I don't see a lot of boats in boathouses anymore. I
You
know
know,
they exist, but
We try. I mean,
I know.
people in good faith. I mean, even in the diagram, put some rails up to the door. Or something. Make it look
so that you're
Make it
trying.
better, huh?
You know, at least make it look like we can tolerate it. That I mean, I'd like to spend the afternoon in that place. That looks great. You know, and I think we're going to talk more about that. I don't know how to deal with it, but the idea for boathouse, the concerns from lake welfare are twofold. Number one, we don't want the lake shore to look like one after another, which the nature of the properties somewhat prevents that. But number two, it's a purpose-driven operation. We're really intending it to be a boathouse. If you don't store a boat, you store boating equipment in there. It really wasn't meant for recreational purposes. If it is, then you build another outbuilding, but further away. We don't have the answers to that yet, but I'm sure we'll be talking more.
And I also comment it doesn't have a flat roof, so we should probably approve it before they realize there's room for a party deck.
I was surprised by that when I looked.
I think
at
it's actually lower in the back, so maybe it would just, well, I
No.
guess you just have stairs going up to
like
it.
a
but-
really nice
To
garage.
be fair, that doesn't, it's no obstruction to anybody else's view that
Yes,
we can tell. So that's normally the concern is you get a deck up top and then, a railing
Umbrellas
that's
and-
obscure. It's like, but that doesn't seem to be the issue. So with that, I'll make the motion to approve the boathouse as presented with the applicant obtaining building, electrical, and plumbing permits prior to commencing any construction. If a sink is proposed, which it is, the property owner shall obtain additional dwelling unit, DUE, for the plumbing. No bathroom facilities are allowed. Illumination from the lighting shall not extend beyond the property boundaries and shall only produce downcast light. And the rain garden shall be installed and planted prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Are you got anything else on the list?
Coming up for it.
It's a darn nice looking boathouse.
Yeah.
Okay, 10E, DLC 0807978011 and DLC 0807978013, 3700 Hillside Drive, owner Delafield Design Mart LLC, applicant Chad Rand, Christima Customs. Applicant seeks approval of a business plan of operation and site plan and appearance review to operate an auto detailing and window tinting business and to make exterior parking and building improvements. Name and addresses, please.
Yes, Chad Ron, S16W32615, Luderbach Court, Delafield.
Jeremy Bartlett, Thrive Architects, 259 South Street, downtown Waukesha.
Amy, you want to give us an overview?
Okay, so I noticed a little typo in my staff report. In one area, I say permanent signage. They did propose signage. They're going to come back. We're going through the multi-tenant signage program right now, so they have to make a few changes. So the applicant is proposing business plan of operation and site plan review. This property consists of, it's on Hillside Drive, consists of a couple of different businesses that you're probably familiar with. Window Design Center, which is now owned by Zern, and then there's Dream Kitchens, and then the space that Chad is occupying was floor 360. This is a condominium building, so it's broken up into three separate units. He owns the half eastern side of it, and then the other two share the western half of it. The original uses were complementary of each other, the type of uses. It's not a requirement. The property is zoned M1 Limited Industrial District, and he is proposing to operate an auto detailing and window tinting business specializing in exotic and high-end vehicles. This type of use is allowed in the M1 district. In order to do that, in the back of the building, and I can show you the building plan, he's going to be proposing it's two overhead doors in order to allow vehicles to get in and out. That will require the modification of the parking area. They will not remove any parking spots, but they will need to add a little extra pavement right here in this hatched area on the plan. So as far as impervious surface and stormwater management goes, because it's an additional 2,695 square feet, it's within a space that was originally approved for a building addition. It is kind of interesting, this little rectangular chunk is a separate tax key number as part of the condominium. It's broken up into a whole bunch of different tax keys, and it gets kind of confusing, but that's what happens with condos. The two overhead doors, I'm going to have to find that plan. One is 10 by 12 and the other is 12 by 12. They will have, they will match the existing window frame, so they're meant to be, attractive and fitting with the existing building. And then they'll also have decorative stone lintels to match the existing stonework on the building. Other than that, business plan of operation, he's got 6 employees operating from 8:30 to 5 p.m. And our hours of garbage pickup is 7 a.m. on Tuesdays. I think sometimes that gets more dictated by the garbage company, but that's what he has in here. So my recommendation is to approve the proposal as presented, and the applicant is aware that he needs to come back in for signage. And I'll look for the,
So that's the front of the building, and the parking lot's like in the foreground?
This would be the rear of the building. This would be in the parking lot side, so the front of the
so the
building
parking
won't
lot,
change.
I'm in the parking lot, that's what I see. So the doors are to the right, facing that. And right now in those 3 locations, there's just windows?
Correct.
Yes, the center window is remaining, center door is remaining, and we're taking out 2 glass areas and replacing with glass doors.
Can you see that bottom rendering kind of shows what's there? It's hard to see.
It is.
Well, actually, they whited out the, I think they whited out the windows. Well, it matches the stuff on the other side.
Comments? You guys have anything else you want to add?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal as presented.
Thank you.
Pending you come to us with the signage.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on the record.
Good luck in the city of
You're on the
Delafield.
record.
We wish you many customers.
You're on the record. You're in the lineup. You got the minutes.
Do my own.
Thank
Car's
you.
not exotic.
Okay, 10F. DEL,
Clearview.
right?
Yeah. Okay. You're on now. He's all paranoid now.
You guys are making me question myself. FDLC 07989999002-935 Main Street. Owner Elizabeth Harn. How do I say that? Harned. Clearview Home Corporation. Applicant Misty Hintz. VJS Construction. Applicant seeks feedback and scheduling a public hearing for a conditional use amendment and site plan and appearance review for improvements to the Clearview homes, including a building addition, new meeting hall, new outbuilding, and modified parking. If you guys can give us your names and addresses, please.
Elizabeth Harned, 935 Main Street, Delafield.
Misty Hintz, 8527 West Willow Point Parkway in Franklin.
Rob Davy, Lake Country Engineering, 970 South Silver Lake Street, Economowoc.
Thank you very much. Amy?
Okay, so the property's on the north side of Main Street and the south side of, Milwaukee Street. It's an existing senior living facility. They are operating as part of a conditional use permit. The existing conditional use permit, just as a little background, includes the independent living. It authorized a CBRF with a limit of 18 beds. It also approved independent living cottages arranged as a cluster of duplex buildings. They have not constructed those. And then an attached independent living building, a memory care unit, and a sheltered care unit. So the only thing that they have ended up building is the main building with 6 beds as part of a skilled nursing facility.
Just to the right of the picture.
Yeah, so this is a hard map to see, but you guys are familiar with the property. It's the building on the far east side. There's also an outbuilding out there, and then a house, right? A cottage that they would be tearing down in order to propose the plan that they have in here, which would be in addition to the main building to include 4 extra beds. I'm losing my focus here as we move on. 4 extra beds, and then they have a little maintenance building, and then a larger building. This would be another example of an event. It's an event facility. It's more of a meeting space. They do say down the road they would maybe consider weddings, but we can talk about that a little bit more. And then on this plan, they're showing 3 duplex buildings in replacement of those cottages that were originally approved. They're not proposed at this time, and there's quite a bit of more review that would be required for those. The topography is tricky, access to Milwaukee Street is tricky. So right now we're really focusing on the addition and the 2 other buildings. And I will go to the colored renderings, which can be the most helpful sometimes. So this is a picture of the addition to the building, okay? And they have civil plans in also. And then you can see there's quite a bit of stonework and quite a bit of stonework on the what would be north side of the building as well. And then there's a patio outside space to the west of that. In the packet also is inclusive of the floor plans that you would have had a chance to look at. This is the meeting space. The meeting space is 3,389 square feet. The addition to the main building, by the way, is 4,283 square feet, and it'll have 4 additional beds and then some accessory uses that go with it. This one will include a serving kitchen, bathrooms, 3 offices, and a training room. And it would be a place for lectures, Christian Science and Nursing Association meetings, service meetings, and spiritual retreats. And then they do include in their plan a 3 to 6 year out plan, farm to table events and wedding venues, which would include maybe 5 to 6 weddings a season, a season with no tobacco, drugs, or alcohol. And then the maintenance building. So there's another image of the meeting hall. And then this is the maintenance building, which is pretty straightforward, 20 by 30, 600 square foot equipment building. The parking, they have 35 parking spaces proposed. They're required to have 34, including all of the different uses. They have 2 parking stalls that are directly in front of the dumpster enclosure. I don't know if those are there now or not, but they really shouldn't be. You really shouldn't have parking stalls in front of the dumpster enclosure. If somebody were to park there, it's going to block them. So if they remove those 2 stalls, they'll be short 1 parking stall, which I would assume you can make up elsewhere. There is room on the property. The engineering staff did a brief review. They do have a concern related to the horizontal setback from the 100-year storm event. They don't think that the meeting hall or future duplexes meet the requirement, and although the duplexes aren't proposed for stormwater purposes, they want to consider that. So they'll have to go, we'll want to have that resolved before you come in with a plan for the public hearing, because that could change your site plan potentially. And then the proposed addition will include a requirement for additional sewer recs, which will require additional fees that I just want to make the applicants aware of. And then they are proposing a sign on Main Street, somewhere in here. Here we go. And the sign will be 66 inches wide by 43 inches tall, which is 20 square feet, and it'll be on post, and the height of the sign will be 5.5 feet. That all meets the code requirements. The sign is going to be 10.9 feet from the right-of-way, whereas 50 feet is required in a residential district. Because it's a conditional use, any signage is actually approved through that conditional use, and in the code, it allows the Plan Commission to waive the road setback provided there's no traffic or safety concerns. The sign is not illuminated. And then if you've driven by there recently, they do have some private drive signs. Those should really be included in the packet for your consideration. They're really, they can speak to it, but it's my understanding people are driving onto their property quite a bit that don't.
It's pretty much a failed experiment.
Okay.
They don't pay attention to it either. So Basically, once the sign goes up, the other stuff will all come down. That's why we didn't include it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are coming down.
Yeah.
Lighting and landscaping hasn't been proposed yet, but should be, if you're proposing any changes, should be submitted for consideration. And I guess this point, they're requesting your feedback, and then, you'll need to determine when they should come, when you should schedule a public hearing for the changes.
I wondered if Rob could speak to the 100-year stormwater thing.
I've had a good discussion with Brian Peel, working with Mike on the design of these, and I admit I didn't look at it, so I know I have to revise some of the things. In your code, you allow for 2 different setbacks, one for commercial and one for residential. The commercial is 10 feet, the residential is 25 feet. Both are 2 feet above. My understanding of that is in a commercial use, you don't have basements, so the water that sits in the basin won't soak into the basement area or the living area. So with that being said, we both discussed it, and he's comfortable stating that the meeting hall would fall under the commercial type setback, which is 10 feet. And I believe I only have to move that building 2 feet north to get it to meet that portion of it. The large basin in the middle, I will have to reconfigure to get to 25 feet because that will be above the what I would consider the basement of those future duplexes. The one that he agrees with me on but doesn't feel comfortable approving and wanted me to talk to you about is the lower one. The lower one is below what I would consider the basement. So even though it's a residential, if it's sitting in the ground, it's not going to get into the basement area. So I'd like that one to be considered to have the 10 feet also, even though those aren't really commercial buildings. He doesn't disagree with me, but he also said he doesn't really have the approval to change what the code says and wanted me to bring it up to you because I will ask for that change, mainly because if we have to move the basin so it's 25 feet, we're taking out another 118-inch diameters of trees, very nice hickories, black walnuts, 22, 24, 18-inch caliber, and I would like to try to save those, and I could if we can maintain that 10 feet with that one basin that's below the basement areas.
Yeah, we made an adjustment to the addition when we realized that we'd be taking out a big old oak tree. So instead of going straight out, we adjusted the addition to the main building so we could save the oak tree.
I think you have a very large chestnut tree too, on the west side of the lot.
Yeah, we
probably one of the only ones left in Delafield.
Yeah, we I think, is that the one where I think we cut the patio on that one, on that side too, so we wouldn't be taking it down either. Yeah.
Rob, on that stormwater, are you talking about the future cottages?
Yes.
That, where the slab is, would be lower than what a basement would be?
Well, the idea is the garages are going to be in the basement. So that slab is like the lower level basement, and then you would go up above that.
So from Milwaukee Street, you're going to see a garage. It's almost going to look like a two-story building.
Correct.
But from the other way, it'll look like a one-story.
Yes.
So the basement is, or the garage is.
The garage is going to be in the basement, not the whole thing, but you would be driving into the basement elevation.
And the concern is that the detention pond might leak into that garage area.
That's what my understanding of the code is in residential. When you have a basin that's 1 or 2 feet below the first floor level, you've got basements 10 feet below. So if water does migrate out of them sideways, that 25 feet was given so that it migrates out sideways and down and won't get into the basement. In the commercial where you don't have a basement,
if it goes sideways, you're getting into footing, and that's why it's 10 feet. That's the only reason. If I had basement down there underneath this basin, I wouldn't even be asking.
That garage will probably be a block wall or a concrete wall
Yes, of some sort.
with waterproofing.
Yeah, normal.
They generally are, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's different with, like, those garages will have an open face, of course.
Yes.
You could put drain tile around them and it would daylight out.
Yes.
And anything that did seep in there.
Well, the whole 100-year flood will be 2 feet below the garage floor.
It will be 2 feet below.
Yes, that I'm not asking for variance. It's the 10-foot horizontal setback.
Mhm. I got it. I'm not too.
Is there a way
concerned
where you
about
can go
that.
15? I mean, can you make sure you maximize it and still protect the trees?
I can look at it. I just looked at it tonight before I came in, that if we had to move it to 25, we were into the next row of trees. And unfortunately, if I think we move it at all, we're going to get into the root systems, and they would be gone anyway.
I don't want to forget a thought. So when we talked about lighting and landscaping and having to submit a plan, you do need to submit, the landscape plan needs to include all existing trees, location, type, size, and you'll have to mitigate for inch per inch for loss or pay in lieu fees. So that, I know there are a lot of trees out there, and I don't believe we have a plan that shows the tree cutting, or did you submit something, Rob?
I looked at my plans and it was incomplete from what I had done, but I did do a calculation. I thought on the inch diameters that we were taking out, and I don't have that plan with me.
Well, we can, before you come back, let's just make sure you
Right.
have an adequate plan.
Preliminary, any concerns with the layout or the parking or the access or the types of buildings? Any?
It looks good.
No,
It
overall, it
looks
looks
good as
good.
usual.
Yeah.
Do good work there.
Good.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Amy, are you getting the feedback you're looking for?
Well,
Anything you want clarity on?
No, I mean, I would bring it back for a public hearing unless you want them to make any specific changes.
No. Make a recommendation to schedule a public hearing.
I would
Make
just
a
say
motion.
the public hearing, it should be upon meeting the engineering comments and submittal of any landscaping and lighting with tree mitigation. So that might mean that they won't make the November meeting. It might mean scheduling the hearing in December. I don't know.
You want them to submit?
The meeting the engineering comments.
Yeah, I got that.
And then submitting any lighting and landscaping, which includes tree mitigation.
How detailed do you want the landscaping to be? Because we don't really have a lot of ideas yet. I mean, you just want to know what trees are going to be removed and how we're going to replace it, or what the fees will be, or.
Well, that's up to the plan commission if they want to allow you to come back for site plan review, or if they want it to be part of the conditional use amendment.
I'm assuming you had a landscape plan the last time you came, so
We
it
did,
would be.
and we did.
I don't think
and-
we're looking for any more detail than what that would have been.
Well, it's pretty detailed, and if I were to go back, and I'd probably change a lot more and not be quite so frou-frou. We're also looking to do some adjustments in the wooded area so that we can build a little path that without taking anything down. I'd like to use a local landscaper. I haven't even talked about that. I haven't even found the funding for it. So we'd like the stormwater management pond up front to be a rain garden, to have that, because it's right there in front of the building. I mean, who wants to drive by and see a stormwater management pond full of weeds, which is what we've got going on in the back of our building. So, I mean, I want to put a lot more thought into the landscaping so that it would bring out the natural resources of the property better, that it would protect some of those trees that we want to protect, but yet would clean up the brush and the debris that's, along the Bleecker Street wooded area. Though that's just my feedback on that. I mean, we're happy to come back when we have something a little more solid, but we want it to continue to be. I want it to be more of a woodland sort of thing, to not just look like this commercial building out. With we got so many hydrangeas around that new building. I'm like, I didn't realize how many we'd have, and we've got some lilac tree bushes that are just not quite what I was hoping they would be either. So, and we really, pushed that through so we could get that building up because the other one was just about ready to fall down. So I just really wanted to take a lot more time with the landscaping and have it be more thoughtful. And as far as the lighting goes, it'll definitely match whatever's up front and whatever you guys want. We don't have any issues with.
Yeah, you're in a residential neighborhood, so downward lighting, conscientious
we
of
don't have any
your neighbors.
issues with anything like that. Yeah.
What you did before.
Yeah, we want the neighbors to be happy. So, but we're happy to come back with that.
I think I'd be in agreement for them to come back with the landscaping.
When would the submittal date for the November public hearing be?
The other one is needed.
Next week, Wednesday.
It'll be December.
There you go.
It'll be what?
It'll be December. I can't make that week Wednesday.
I mean, what is your construction schedule? Is December okay? I think it would be nice if you had the lighting. And so if we think about the public hearing is for the public comment, and those residential neighbors will want to see what your lighting is going to look like for sure. I think landscaping, you could probably wait on, but.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Okay.
That is if you don't reschedule your December meeting.
Well, we're going to talk about that later tonight.
That always happens.
But our new deadlines, no matter what the date ends up being, should work out in your favor. You've already submitted your application, so we'll be able to get it noticed.
And building really is dependent upon when we get through this process, and then I have to go out and search for donors. So I'd like to see the meeting building or something start by summer, but we're just whatever kind of unfolds in God's time, we'll work with that. So.
A little more calmer the second time around.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, nothing's falling down. Although I will say, we did look into what it would take to shore up that cottage on the property, because I know the last time we were here, there was fond comments about it. But it is just, it's kind of like the regular building. I mean, the foundation's about ready to fall apart. The chimney needs to be repaired, and it barely has any insulation. So, and the kitchen floor goes like that. So, it just didn't seem reasonable to try to put that much money into refurbishing it.
Wow. No.
All right, Amy, do you need any more clarification from the planning commission?
I could use, just if you're leaning towards letting us be 10 feet with that lower basin, it would really help me in my design of the stormwater pond. The other two, I have no issues and we'll meet them. It's that lower one, I guess, I don't need an approval on it, but I need a little direction whether.
Is that a city ordinance, Rob,
Yes.
or state?
It's a city ordinance.
City. I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's really
In lieu
on,
of
it's
saving
really on you and
trees.
your customer to make sure you're comfortable with the drainage, and us to confirm that we're comfortable with that decision.
This is the one with the driver in the garage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's reasonable, what you're saying. I mean, we're trading it off for trees, which drink a lot of water.
Right.
For the trees, and it certainly is able to drain if something were to
But just remember, if and when you come back for the condos or that you take measures to put extra stone along the exterior of that cinder block wall and proper drainage over there. That's the insurance that
is
long term you need if we do go to the 10 feet, which sounds like we're comfortable with. you don't want a problem, and neither does anybody else,
Well, that's
right?
one of the reasons why we had to get out of the old building, because every time it rained, the stormwater management pond was the basement.
Yeah.
So, so we're well,
It hides it.
Given this information, we may be going back to the drawing board. So,
I'd be comfortable with it too, because I live in a house with a driveway and garages, and everything does tend to drain in that direction, and we have a lot of stone underneath. We just installed new drainage pipes that help with that, because there's retaining walls on both sides, and it really does help. And everything does tend to want to run downhill there where the garages are. So yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. So I lost a little track here. Do we have a motion and a second, or are we still waiting for the motion?
I have a motion from Schultz.
Yeah.
And Jashinsky being the next person that started talking about
Spoke.
it is technically the seconder.
I'm
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you'd like me to reread the motion,
Yes, please.
to schedule a public hearing regarding. Oh. So the motion by Schultz, seconded by Jashinsky, to schedule a public hearing regarding a conditional use amendment and site plan and appearance review for improvements to Clearview Homes, including a building addition, new meeting hall, new outbuilding, and modified parking upon meeting engineering comments, and submitting any lighting plans and landscaping plans, which should include tree mitigation as required.
For the December meeting, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we determined it was going to be for the December meeting? So as opposed to upon meeting the comments, we're just gonna say for the December meeting?
Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll get in before that, so we can have plenty of time to review.
Yeah.
All
Let's
right.
give you some time.
All right.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be seeing you in December. Okay, last item under new business, 10G, DELC 0798966 Genesee Street, owner VT Properties Incorporated, applicant Ann Johnson. Applicant seeks business plan of operation approval to operate a spiritual vision astrology reading and healing shop. Is she here?
She's not here.
She's not here.
Oh, okay.
So when the applicant's not here, we definitely
Postpone.
don't approve.
No,
But
can't do anything.
are we able to, we can deny if we would like to. Is that a possibility, or we'd only want to do that with the applicant here?
I would think you'd want to have the applicant here.
Yeah.
Planning commission good with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
I've got
so
questions.
we'll skip it. Right, we'll move down to 11A, comprehensive plan zoning and ordinance revision. Discussion and possible action on the following items. A whole bunch of DLLCs. Applicant, City of Delafield, provide feedback regarding amending the land use plan category from agricultural category to planned mixed use in accordance with the Economic Development Focus Group recommendation, and adopt a resolution for consideration by the Common Council. Amy?
Okay, so I have a lengthy staff report. Sorry, this is very loud. I think I'm going to go through it, okay?
Yep.
Briefly. So this was discussed by the focus group recommendation. Oh, hold on. Hold on while I get back to the packet.
Amy, are you planning to read all of what you have in the packet?
Everything? No, I'm going to summarize it, though.
Okay.
Okay, so just as a reminder, I know we've talked about this for a couple months. The focus group did recommend some changes to the Highway 83 corridor. I think we in the public understand where the focus group came from, so I won't go through that again. The area along 83 specifically, they were recommending commercial let me take a step back. They're recommending planned mixed use as a land use category. So I think it's really important to understand there's several different layers of documents that the city uses in making decisions. So the land use plan is the overarching document, making recommendations for the long-term vision of the city. Looking 20 years out, it gets updated every 10 years. So the long-term vision is to put this in a planned mixed-use category with the understanding that that would mean that there would likely be commercial, business park type uses along Highway 83. I think we would change, this is the focus group recommendation. If it were to go through, we would change that text to business park to just make it clear that it's a tighter restricted area. And then transitioning on the north side of the river from medium density residential, which is 4 units per acre, down to 1 acre residential, and then to 2 acre residential. So for the people that would live on the western edge of this, they're going to see a transition of lower to higher density residential going from their properties east. The properties along Campbell Trace would be included in the new business park area. And then on the south side of the river, similar categories with the commercial or business park use along Highway 83, and then transitioning from medium density residential to 1 acre residential as you go west. So that's the recommendation of the focus group. The reasoning behind that recommendation is that the area is mostly flat on along Highway 83. There's a little steep corner up in the northwest area, which the city would then have the opportunity to restrict the kind of development that would go in there because of the steep slopes. The area is on a state highway. It's between 2 interchanges. There is a business park on the east side of the highway, and the area is served by sewer and water. When this area was developed in mostly 3 acre lots, the area did not have the sewer and water services. The cost associated with that type of infrastructure is expensive, and it does create a more urban environment, which is being encompassed around it. So the areas around it are becoming more urban. The other thing that they did talk about is that any changes that would be made would need to be compatible with the existing residential to the west and along Campbell Trace. Again, the specific development details as was shown in the other items discussed tonight are reviewed very carefully by the city at time development occurs. And I know there was a comment about having very specific boundaries. Well, in a land use plan, the whole boundary is actually planned mixed use. So that is the category. These boundaries, the reason why they were recommended to be flexible is based on that development plan. It's hard to project exactly where the roads will go or exactly the dimensions of the lots that might be needed, which may tweak the line a little bit, one way or another. Or maybe the business park use is much smaller, and then it gives the ability to have a larger residential use. I wouldn't anticipate the business park becoming much larger. These are pretty generous boundaries. The residential component, any residential component would require a conservation plan unit development. The group did find that was really important. That gives the opportunity to provide those large open space buffers surrounding that use and the surrounding uses. The group did not feel that traffic from the commercial uses should travel west to the roads on the west side, which are Fair Lakes and Hirschman. And I know there's some concern about it, but it's my understanding that the commercial uses they're not interested in going through residential corridors either. They need to have the easiest path in and out, and they don't really want to commingle beyond that entrance area.
And this wording is specifically restricting it.
It's restricting it, saying that it would not be allowed. The recommended language also suggests that all existing uses would be allowed to remain. So there would be no requirement to change the existing use into another category. And those uses would comply with the land use plan, again, being in planned mixed use. This item has been discussed at the last 2 Plan Commission meetings. There was also a joint Plan Commission and Common Council meeting in October. So for the public who was unable to attend that meeting, it is on YouTube. You can watch it at any time. It was a presentation that was given by Nicole Riff, the County Executive of Waukesha County Center for Growth, because, as the city is making and considering, at this point, considering decisions, the more information they have, the better it is for them to make a sound decision. So she came to talk about, I think it came up from Plan Commission members, the viability of a business park use and the expectations for that marketability or viability, which is important in the decision making, because if you go too restrictive or less restrictive, it may affect what comes in. And then you're able to make those decisions accordingly. There were some pictures in that meeting that were showing business park uses that were probably far more intensive than what the city would consider. So in the packet tonight, there are additional pictures of more of what was in the city would probably have in mind. So we can talk about that a little bit more. Going back to why, and maybe I should have started with this, but I know we've talked about this at the last few meetings as well. Why did that, why is planned mixed use something that we were continuing to consider for several months after the recommendation of the focus group? We've talked about it does help, it can help balance the city's budget, and it also encourages a sustainable community by providing a mix of land uses, which can provide employment opportunities and homes and open spaces if done well, which the special land use designation criteria are intended to make sure that happens. In also looking at the appropriate category, it's important to look at the cost of community services that was completed. All uses that would be recommended here, or really any use in the city other than the tax exempt uses, do bring in more revenue than it costs to serve. So that is good. It's just a matter of the amount, the cost of each of those uses can be significantly less depending on the type of use. So residential comes in at about just under $1 of services for every $1 that comes in revenue. And business park uses, or they call it industrial use in the cost of community services that come out of the focus group recommendations, come in at 0.67 cents per $1 of you get for every $1 of revenue, it costs 0.67 cents of
67
to serve.
Can I don't want to break up your
67 cents to serve. Sorry.
I don't want to break up your rhythm on it. Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
I'm struggling with that. I don't buy that because I feel like that might be a southeastern Wisconsin, macro Waukesha. I don't believe those numbers. Where do we get those?
So it's actually very specific to the city of Delafield.
It is.
It's difficult. There's a very significant spreadsheet that goes into a whole bunch of data related to the fire and police services, the public works roles. When this cost of community services was prepared, every department within the city was actually interviewed and analyzed. So the data that goes into it is pretty substantial, and it is specific to Delafield.
It is Delafield specific.
Yeah, we did not want to use generic.
Right.
So residential uses, you actually nationally tend to cost more in services than the revenue that's brought in, but because the property values in Delafield are so high, that's not the case. So that's an unusual and good circumstance.
That's where I was going with this.
So the data that came out of this was unusual. It's unusual from what you normally see because of Delafield's scenario. Now, with that information, unfortunately, it's not available for tonight, but there has been a request to have that cost of a little bit of a deeper dive on the cost of community services to consider a scenario that might be applicable to this particular area. So
even smaller than just the city of Delafield, we're talking about right in these spots.
I just don't know if the delta is 30 cents on the dollar. That's tough for me to economically get my head around. But I guess you're talking about snow removal in a residential
Yeah, and just emergency services.
Well,
There's very
emergency
little
services,
service.
though, I mean, emergency service load in Milwaukee is different than it is in Delafield, right? That's why I asked that question.
Yes. Again, it is specific to Delafield, but we can, there is going to be a little bit of a deeper dive comparing the different land use scenarios for this area.
Yeah.
So,
Because we want to make sure we're getting, I mean, we feel confident in the numbers, but we're even going to tighten them up even tighter.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously exactly 0.6, I keep saying 0.67, 67 cents.
Whether it's off 10 cents or not, it's not irrelevant.
It could be plus or minus,
Just, yeah.
but the idea is, I mean, that's a pretty standard that business park type uses cost the least, commercial is kind of in the middle, and then, or actually commercial is pretty close to residential. You just have more of the retail theft and emergency
Which we're not having any
services.
retail.
For the residential, Amy, is that including schools at all? That servicing number for residential, is that just the city cost?
For the cost, that's a good question. I'll have to look into the
Because that
into
could
the
really
analysis.
change things if that's involving schools.
Yeah, I can look at the.
Schools are a win, aren't they? I mean, because they get their state
I'm just
funding, their
looking
state
at
funding
taxes.
You mean the amount of money that
for the
goes?
city though? That's outside
That's what
the
I'm
city.
asking.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
outside.
independent in those numbers when they talk about
gotta-
cost of service?
I mean, we'll,
Residential.
It would most likely have to be because that's a state-funded.
Right.
Yeah, I'll look to
Mechanism.
make.
It is separate. If you look at the pie, it's
Yeah.
separate.
I'll certainly look to make sure.
Yeah.
And then, going into the sustainable community, encouraging a variety of uses, the current ratio within the city is about 35% of the city is residential, 14% of the city is agricultural, 7% is governmental and institutional, 3% is commercial, your more standard retail service type commercial, 4% is mixed use, and then 0.18% is in the industrial land use category.
Kettle court.
So, and I believe that's limited to pretty much, it's Kettle Court East is the only area.
Yep.
So the category of planned mixed use does allow the city to consider a mix of the uses and consider the cost long-term. And at the last meeting, your recommendation was to allow either business park or residential uses. It could be that in that special use category, you build something in there where if a developer were to come in, they need to do an individual cost of community services based on that specific proposal to see if it gives you the benefit that you're looking for. It actually already is written to the code that we can require an economic benefit analysis. So then at the, a couple points from the joint meeting, was everybody present at the joint Plan Commission Council
Yes.
meeting? I'll just state some of the items for the folks in the audience then. So Nicole was just again providing some factual information and some data that she has. So 49%, they did a business survey recently, and 49% of the businesses are already using 100% of their space. And 79% of the businesses and this is a Waukesha County survey, not Delafield survey, plan to expand in the near future. Businesses do prefer to stay near the community that they reside in. And there were some questions about, what that typical distance is, and she's going to look into that. There were a couple of different questions that she's researching. Due to the suburban environment, agricultural uses may not be sustainable long-term, and low-density residential may be difficult to market if not commercial. What do I have in here? Sorry, I've got to check my notes. Low-density residential may be difficult to market, and the city will need to consider, the appropriate densities. If it's not commercial, so if you don't go with the orange category, then the next step would be to consider, well, what is appropriate for residential? Or even if you do allow business park or residential, we just need to make sure you choose the density. Is it 4 units per acre? Is it lower density residential? So keep that in mind. And then with the special use provisions that are recommended, we'll go through them. There is a resolution in the packet that is, and I think it was mentioned at the last meeting, that doesn't mean the Plan Commission is going to rush to adopt a resolution tonight. It's just very valuable to have a document in hand to start working off of and go one way or the other. Otherwise, the conversation becomes a little bit circular. So going back to Nicole Riff's comments, she did state that buildings, ideal building size is between 100 and 250,000 square feet, which I know the city did discuss that may be too large, and you can certainly, once you get into creating a zoning district, put restrictions on the size and type. And I believe actually one of the letters, I'd like to get a copy of it, had recommendations about 1 story, the size, the area, certain buffers. We can build that stuff, but to be honest with you, that's typically put into a zoning code, not a land use plan. Again, this is very high level, big picture, where we're at right now.
And it's our constant challenge as we've gone, this is what our 6th one now is. Us as well as the citizens understanding the difference between what we talk about when we talk in land use and what we talk on zoning. They often get mixed and confused as to what each one does individually.
So none of the business park or residential uses at these densities would be allowed without a rezone, and that's where you can build in text and specific provisions related to exactly how the development needs to look and feel.
I know that's sad, but I think we have to recognize as a body, I finally get it. I'm newer into this. Some of you have been around, but I get there's like 3 tiers. Land use, zoning, and then approve whatever a developer's proposing, right? So you've got 3 steps. I kind of get that, but most people don't. They think whatever happens with land use is it's just going to go. And I think that's part of what we have to recognize with the public is that's what they see. From my perspective, to do a land use where you can then see what you get, right? And you can pick and choose makes a lot of sense. But most people will assume that that's not how the process will work, that once that train is left, it's left. So I think as we deliberate and just talk about this, let's face that reality, right? Even though we might get it, it's not well understood.
Right.
Sure. So Nicole did mention that buildings between 100,000 and 250,000 square feet are a sweet spot for developers. And then those spaces are ideally broken up into smaller tenant spaces. Part of that is because there, historically were a lot of owner-occupied buildings, and those folks would enjoy or use smaller spaces, but those are tending to be replaced by private equity firms, and there's a stronger need for shovel-ready tenant space. It's a cheaper build. It can be pretty expensive to build out into individual spaces at a smaller square footage. It gets more and more difficult the smaller it gets. In particular, less than 50,000 square foot buildings are hard to market for the business park type uses. Then you're starting to get into more of the commercial type retail service type facilities. And she also pointed out that the manufacturing and business park uses have changed over time. So what you saw built 30 years ago is not what's being built today. They're highly automated, engineering heavy, very clean, very quiet, less parking because the reality is there are less employees because there aren't employees. So they automate more and more. And they're very technical and sophisticated buildings. And the city would always have the ability to put architectural restrictions on a proposal as well. There were several concerns at the previous meetings. You have heard them. There was a petition also signed against the proposal with over 200 people. These public comments and concerns should be considered during the decision-making process. The concerns, and I know that it's been mentioned that the city is rushing this and moving forward very quickly, but it's actually been a very transparent process and there has been significant public input. So I know there were some comments about not having enough public input, but there has been a lot of input and we haven't even gotten to a public hearing yet where the formal the input is provided and discussion is had. The sooner we know about the concerns, the better, because then you have the opportunity to address them. But there's still several months to go if this were even, accepted tonight, for example. But the concerns included incompatibility with the surrounding land uses, having the nearby residential properties at a lower density, environmental degradation, and the public may not be aware, but the city does have very good environmental restrictions, tree cutting provisions, stormwater management provisions, wetland provisions, environmental corridor provisions. Methodology of the focus group efforts was a concern. Increased traffic on Highway 83. I believe at a previous meeting it was mentioned that Highway 83 is already over capacity for a 2-lane highway, so that issue isn't going to go away. Traffic on local streets in the area, safety, natural beauty being preserved, and commercial use related noise. And so, a lot of those issues can be addressed during the development review process, depending on which way you go. Whether it's residential and or business park, the city looks at those types of items. It's built into the zoning code to do so. Other than that, if you don't have any other questions, we can go through the special use area draft provisions.
Yeah, and maybe you can highlight the ones where we've added the changes based on either commissioners or citizens' input into this document that weren't in there before.
Yeah, where did we leave it with? So I was, I'm in manufacturing, so I know a little bit of what I call light industrial, and I feel like people live in Delafield and drive to do industrial work. They don't live somewhere else and drive to Delafield to do industrial work. And if you look down that Les Paul kind of parkway there's a lot of farm fields in Waukesha County. So I think she's right, there's some, but as the U.S. reshores into manufacturing, you see a lot in the South. A lot of businesses are moving there. There's a more ready workforce. So I'm just struggling with the light industrial demand concept on this piece of property. Now business park, maybe different story.
I think that we've switched to that.
Yeah,
we mixed that.
I'm with Dan on that, and if it seems like the new
we're getting
report
rid of the word
park.
industrial, and we're talking about a commercial business park.
So what exactly? Frame that up for me a little bit. What is a commercial business?
Well, that's what I guess we're going to talk about,
Okay.
because you can make those decisions. Now, in Nicole's presentation, she did say the more restrictive you make it, the less marketable it may be to those type of business park users. Office is less desirable in today's day and age. Manufacturing is very desirable. Light distribution is beneficial to those manufacturing uses. And then, medical complexes, she said, are still viable. They actually would be a little bit more intense and bring in more traffic than some of those other uses.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with putting restrictions on it, as long because it's important that it be compatible with the neighborhood. That's more important to me than more flexibility for industrial uses, right? I mean, like you said earlier, it's about creating a land use vision and seeing what comes. And if nothing comes based on the restrictions we have, because that's what we think will be compatible with the area that it's in, so be it. And it can always turn to residential.
Yeah.
Always. There's nothing stopping it from being 100% residential in anything that we do in looking at the changes that we're talking about here for land use.
Right, so the planned mixed use category, the nice thing about it is if the market isn't there, there's other opportunities for other uses.
No, I understand.
It's just the business park would be the most intense allowable uses, so that's where you want to focus most of your energy right now, because that would be the most intense. But
I understand
residential
that.
has been
Unfortunately, we
added.
have a public that doesn't. That's why I'm asking the question out loud and making it visible. Is I get that, and it opens up the whole point that, well, if we would make it so restrictive because we're Delafield and this is what we want to do, does it actually just flip it to what the heck? It's all residential.
It could if you take it.
Yeah,
if you go too far,
Right.
that could be the.
None of us know until you see what people offer in terms of what they want to do.
I'd like to make a couple comments. Number one, I want citizens to know that we are listening. I, for one, take notes on every person that sits in that chair. So we are listening. this last month, there hasn't been a day I haven't thought about the 83 area. I can remember when the zoning was for 400 houses to be there on that land. That is why we spent $1 million for the park, was for that subdivision, that huge subdivision that would be over there, would be utilizing this park. That's why we bought the park ahead of time. We have a church there with a baseball field. I, for one, don't think this is good city planning. The growth group is advisory only. And to me, that to go to an industrial park or even an office park I don't see how it's not going to lower property values, because I don't see an industrial park and an office park where it doesn't affect the homes around it. Because who's going to come here? Lots here are selling for almost $300,000 or more. People are going to spend over $500,000 to put a house on it. Who wants to do that and live next to an industrial park or a business park? I don't want us to be Heartland. I don't want us to be a Conomowoc. People, the reason why this whole thing started was because of the referendum. People here will spend more money for taxes to keep it the way it is. I know that for a fact. It's just the way it is. People want Delafield to be different than everything else around them. I have friends that come here because we're so different. They want to come here, they want to spend the day, because they put up with all that other stuff that we don't. So I, for one, am completely against, and especially when I see this huge area that would become a business park or whatever you want to call it. I'm just not for it. I, for one, know what they would have to put up with, because I made a mistake over 30 years ago when I let a business get in. It changed the zoning. And ever since then, I and my neighbors have fought it. At one point, I even had to hire a lawyer, because once it's changed, it stops nobody from coming along and wanting to change the zoning. Like right now, it's zoned office. I had somebody come in, want to put a landscape business. I had to hire a lawyer to fight it. The next one came in, wanted to put a factory next to the residential. We had to fight. I don't want to see these people have to do that to get something there, because right now I'm struggling with light pollution from a business. I don't want you to have to go through that. I know what it is, and I am totally against this. I'll put it out there.
Well, I'll add on to that a little bit, and that is this process is different than a lot of what we've done in the past, and that is outside of the going through the city master plan process, where we, which that plan is, we're 12 years, 13 years away from that. That process is similar where the city is the applicant. We're going through this process to change and designate land uses for areas that have been the same forever, and maybe we left them the same, we changed some. In anticipation of how change is coming and is being realized, you need a good land use plan in place to avoid a piecemeal approach to individual property owners. I can come into the city and say, instead of my house, I want to put a Starbucks drive-through in my backyard, and I can go through that and I can ask for anything, anytime.
True.
And so it's especially important to have a good land use plan in such vast areas of open space like we are dealing with here. And that is to anticipate what may be coming. And I don't believe that, a typical process would be something like we're going through with the rustic manor. Very specific request on a piece of property where easy to visualize, put restrictions around it, have a conditional use. And it's not an agricultural use right now. It's a business. essentially. But it's on an agricultural property with a conditional use. I see more of that applying all along 83 on a narrow strip between, okay, well, leaving it zoned the way it is not residential. So having a mixed-use plan that defines very specifically what we can and can, what we intend to allow there long-term is very prudent. It avoids the fact, if we sit here and wait, we can get some really good plans and this works here, this works here, this works here, and we don't have these defined transition areas. I don't like the way the map leaves a lot to be determined later. And I agree with the fact, a statement was made about, defined setbacks. The idea where we say, well, these lines can change. And the idea isn't that the lines change, it's that the specific area where this buffer exists. I mean, I think we need to do some work with how far east of the existing developments that residences exist.
Tim, the good news.
I think we need to put in a defined distance and buffer.
Yeah.
Agree.
And then a defined area where we're going to allow certain uses, because this anything goes kind of thing is very scary for people that, it would be for me, and I'd be fighting it as well. But I think that defining a bare minimum, in talking with people individually and some of the people that have spoken here, there's a realization that there's a certain type and an amount of development right on 83 that would make sense, and you could do it in a way like some of the examples here, like Gateway in Brookfield is done, where it's rather innocuous, it's segregated, and the nice sides of the building are facing west, and all the activities on and off 83 without impact.
Tim, I think you're onto
to the
something,
area.
because what we heard from the public throughout this past couple months is, I don't know if there was anybody that got up and said this needs to stay farmland forever. Like pretty much almost everybody said, yeah, we recognize something will change over time. So that's, to me, that was really good news. And I love your idea. Why can't there be a narrow strip right on 83 for that more business-oriented environment, have a buffer, and then the rest of it goes into the residential world?
And just prescribe that distance. If it's 500
keep
feet,
it-
800
keep
feet
it narrow.
west of 83.
That's not what you're showing here.
Right.
But that's why we're
So
talking.
That's why we're talking.
We're saying we
Yeah.
need to define it, because you're not going to find $800,000 homes being built along Highway 83. It will
I
not
see
happen.
houses along
It will not
94.
happen.
So it's not like no one will live there. And
You're not
we
gonna
had
see
talked, we had talked
subdivisions
even
with-
about on 83 having senior living.
That's different.
Yeah,
I agree.
right.
But I think I like that strip.
How narrow
that's
would you make
parallel
it?
to Highway 83.
How narrow could you make
We'd
it?
have to figure out the type of
You have to figure
office
in
buildings and a
the
backage road
expansion
that
of
would
83 also.
connect them.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I think
Yeah.
you need at
So
least 500 feet.
something worth noting is like in like I'll use Gateway as an example, that business park. Somebody mentioned that there's no residential around there. There's an equal amount of space that's residential immediately to the west of Gateway.
We included those pictures in the packet
Yeah.
today, showing you where the
And
residential
they
was
are
butted right up
directly
to it.
they are directly adjacent to the west border of Gateway. But something that business park does that isn't in where I've worked is the fact that loading docks are facing each other. It's sort of like when you have subdivisions where the driveways and garages are facing each other, then the living rooms are facing each other, then the drives. And so the westward facing portions of the building would be we mandate a nice facade, and that's where landscaping and berms would be. So my nightmare scenario, or my thoughts were, if you put business or any commercial district along there, all the loading docks would be facing west.
I agree.
They all have
It's
to
a
face
tricky
each other.
part.
But look at Gateway, they all face, they have a common parking spot and loading dock area that faces each other, and then the other side, there's like the office administration part of the building that faces each other.
So Tim, when you call Gateway though, like light industrial?
It's a total mix of all that stuff, and so I know for like where I've worked the last 30 years. I mean, I've worked in 100,000 square foot buildings with about 100 to 200 employees, and frankly, we're really good neighbors. I mean, our buildings aren't, the one I'm in right now is okay, but but it's right next to Waukesha County Airport. But as far as the use, we're light manufacturing. We build technology products, and I mean we're almost bankers hours, and there's like 5 or 6 trucks a day, and there's less Amazon trucks than in my neighborhood. But there's I like where some of these restrictions are going on this, and as long as we can define the buffer, I'm feeling better about the idea of having a comfort.
Do you want me to just run through some of the pictures that were put in the packet? I feel like that might be a good idea. So the pictures in this first section are from Pewaukee Woods and Westwind. So these are, now somebody had mentioned single-story buildings. That's something you consider. This may create a little bit more interest with the building and keep it more compact. Because business park isn't necessarily just industrial, and so that's a big difference. A medical center might want to have multiple stories. Here's some of these are older buildings, but they still give you an idea. Here's a building with quite a bit of green space and landscaping.
They do network cabling.
And I would. I would envision some open space requirements. And then Gateway West, which has been mentioned, so this is an example of the residential neighborhood that's to the west of the development. And then here are some pictures of landscaping and the sites. This building's very attractive.
Yeah, there's law offices in there, medical, daycare facilities are in that one. That's a beautiful laid out industrial area.
Yeah, like the pictures you've shown so far
Business
are
area.
definitely to me not light industrial. Those are like a business office type environment, insurance company. Or
in my mind, this is the only type of thing I've ever envisioned myself as a possibility to consider.
Light industrial, we should strike that because it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an insurance company, a professional office,
engineers, lawyers,
engineering
machine
office.
sales in there.
It's light manufacturing
so-
and engineering is part of this too. I mean, that's what half these buildings are in Pewaukee Woods, and that they're.
Because what I think people might think of, like what's happening down by Union Grove and Foxconn and all that, they're just spec building, $100,000, and then they're
Well, and that's what
they're
was showed in
segmenting them,
That's
right?
unfortunately got showed at the last meeting, and that was unfortunate.
But I think that's the uses that include some light manufacturing. In today's day and age, can include some pretty nice looking buildings.
But our map today that we've communicated doesn't show the way we've done it so far. It's not a narrow north-south strip that we're really, right, the way that it's kind of.
No, and that's something I do want to just
Yeah, I think part of our
bring
challenge
to your
too
attention.
is what we mentioned, or what was mentioned earlier, is that we already have houses in these blocks. I think these business parks make sense when you are isolated by major streets and something facing the back end. So I mean, I kind of lean with Laura too, where I think it's better if we just consider the 83 corridor. I don't really like the idea of a business park going into that whole land area.
So you have to keep in mind too, though, that when you say that 83 corridor, when you go south from Vedelson all the way down to Cardinal, there's that huge berm in between 83 and the houses.
Yeah.
I drove back there today another time just to see. You really aren't exposed to 83. I think we almost have to segregate these areas into a couple north of the Bark River and then the south of the Bark River, because they're all they have their own situations. More people in one of them,
and whatever business we would have on 83, we'd have berms behind it, so residential would be
right. Yeah, I guess if where we're headed is clear delineation of what the maps would look like, I would agree.
I think we need to do that.
Okay, so looking at the north side, I mean, that's a little bit more complicated than it sounds. We'd probably have to have somebody come in and draw up a potential development, because if you just put a narrow strip
Can we just take a marker and go zoop?
If you took a marker and drew a narrow strip, I guess when I think of what a developer may be interested in and how you separate the commercial from the residential, I don't think, first of all, they're not going to get multiple points of access off of 83. So you're going to have one point of access coming in, and then that area, if you don't include these houses on Campbell Trace, that's a pretty narrow strip. So then, like, I guess I would, which could be more impactful to the people on Campbell Trace, you could, I think there's a road that shows up in the focus group maps, because I think they had an envision that you'd have like a boulevard here. And maybe that commercial or that business park is too wide in this zone, because you'd have a boulevard here and then it would split off and the commercial business park would be up here and this would all be residential. And those impactful areas would be in the inside. It gives you enough green space to create a nice buffer from the residential to the east. The west is actually buffered by some pretty significant topography and tree line. But the stuff on the east, the closer you make it to 83, the less of a buffer they actually have. So it's just something to keep in mind, that I would think it would be like a cul-de-sac type development that would go north and have them, the businesses all be accessed off of a new road.
Are the developers hungry enough? I'm not a developer. Are they hungry enough today where we could get somebody to say, put together, spend a week, put something story together here, show us some vision?
Possibly, I think if they're willing to put the effort into it, maybe, but there's just no willing seller. If there was a willing seller, I think for sure they would. We can look into it to see if that's something
I
somebody
would like
could
to
put
see
together.
how the 4-lane is going to change, because you're going to have 4 lanes, a big medium, like a boulevard. You've got so much right away on each side. How much land that's going to chew up?
Well, whatever the county right of way or state right of way is, that's it. They can't go any further than that, right? So that's on the maps now.
No, they buy right away all the time.
Yeah, they can
All
cut
the
land.
time. All the time.
Or you think they'd buy more? You don't think that's enough what they have there already? Or you don't
No,
know?
it may be. I mean, I remember looking back at years ago.
I was under the assumption they had enough, but if
It is pretty much mapped out, so.
I think most of the land.
But I think it wouldn't hurt to have some conversations with DOT, because people keep saying 2 accesses like Hirschman and Fair Lakes. But would they allow individual driveways to a couple of businesses? Is that completely?
the past feedback I've heard from staff and the folks at the wedding venue when they had their discussions, and that's primarily what I'm remembering, was no driveways off of 83.
I think the city should talk directly to DOT
standard.
planning and get that answer, because
That-
the plat is a Highway 83 plat, access restricted.
I can
If
definitely.
it's not, you are allowed to get access points there. So an access point for a driveway is different than a road. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well,
But if you look at the east side, there's no access except on the main arteries.
But would the
We
neighbors?
can't assume
I mean,
all that. I think somebody needs to just say,
Right,
what is it?
yeah.
I'm not denying
Well, that's
that.
why I'm saying I want to
But-
see how much land would be taken up and how much would be left
The
over.
corridor, I think, is pretty well mapped for that.
The northern side is, but I don't think the southern side is. Past the south of the
I'm not
river.
positive. I think it is, but.
Because if you look on the north side, you will see huge swatches of land with nothing
Well,
on
the
it.
north side, the southbound lanes were going to follow Campbell Trace, and the northbound lanes were going to jog over like that. You can see where they already graded for the bridges back in the 60s.
Yep.
That's all set up for 4 lanes. But I just think it wouldn't hurt to pick up a phone and talk to DOT, have an hour meeting with them on what we can and cannot do here.
we could actually.
Because that'll solve a lot of questions.
I think that's something we can get from SCH for the next meeting, if you like.
I would like that.
I know our master
we can do
plan
that.
even mentions it, to be very mindful of it. Because you don't want to build something and have them come along and have to tear it down.
So I have talked to
Well, yeah,
the
that's not gonna
state about when Nagawicca Heights came in, I gave them a call, and when we talked about the Geeson lands, they weren't willing to commit to any answers because they review it upon development, but I think I could probably reach out to them and tell them we have a specific land use plan amendment we're trying to resolve, and try to get some more specific information.
That would be great.
Because then you know how much land you've got to work with.
I do think it would be So there, if driveways were permissible, it's still a more dangerous scenario
Yeah.
than
Oh, I
having a
agree.
single road.
But you could also do a scenario where a driveway comes in and serves a quarter mile of some of these businesses, like a backage road. And that's separate from the through road that's going into residential.
Right.
So you can do things that would be safe. I'm not talking about 20 access points, no. But a couple here and there to serve that business park, if DOT would allow it.
And if we couldn't get somebody to do it for free, and I've looked, those of you on the council, I have total respect for you with managing this budget and the state limitations, because I can tell the city of Delafield runs lean and mean when it comes to staffing. We are not a bloated organization by any stretch. And so, but if we could maybe take a couple $1,000s to a developer and say, draw us a plan. Here, we want 75% residential, 25% business park. Here's some examples. Put it with the Bark River. That's a unique, this isn't just 100 acres of a square farmland. You've got this Bark River phenomenon, and it might be worth getting somebody to draw that up to kind of create the vision, even though I know we got to go through land use modification and all that. I get it, but it might help us and maybe the residents have a vision before we pull the trigger on documents. Has anybody ever done something like that before, Amy, in other cities that you're aware of?
Yeah, you can certainly prepare a concept master plan of the area. The fact is, it does cost dollars, and when the city doesn't know where the recommendation may be coming from, they just have cities
Is that a
decide where to spend
$4,000
that
ticket?
money.
Is it a $15,000
I
ticket?
couldn't answer that.
All right. Just an idea.
We
It's all over
investigated. I
the
know
place depending upon how much
this is
detail you would want.
about 6 years ago. Mayor Dio asked for funding to come up with a plan for the southeast corner of 83. I'm sorry, Highway C and 94. To say, okay, well, people have come in, been defeated several times. It's a difficult piece to develop, and we had an estimate of somewhere around, it was between 15 and 20 grand just to plot out a plan to say this is how a business park would look in here.
Yeah.
So I would expect more than that for this.
Yeah.
Which is clearly a budget item that has to be approved. This is not some money that gets, that falls into the existing budget guidelines, right?
Welfare committee, you got money, don't you? You got a new boathouse that you're putting. Boathouse out there, right? Yeah.
One of the things, Dan, you brought up earlier was this, the 67 cent on the dollar number, and it was made very clear from the woman from the Waukesha County Economic Development Group that the more restrictions you put in, the farther away you get from that 67 cents, and it starts going up. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's like we're trying to mine this area for dollars for revenue, and
that's compatible.
Yeah, I know, but we're looking to encourage a certain development that's profitable. Yet we need to lay on all these restrictions to make sure that it fits. If we end up at 82 cents versus the 90 cents that RE2 gets us,
I was thinking
this is
the
just
same.
a lot of work,
and that's an excellent point.
It's a lot of anguish to get to pennies.
And Tim, can you comment on, because I'm familiar with the state funding. I mean, if you want to go out and vote about the state bureaucracy and how much money at the state level, because I think people don't realize how cities are limited by what the state allocates with the revenue sharing. And so, I mean, that's a big part of our limitation on the budget is our growth over the last 7 to 10 years has been 1% type numbers, and therefore that limits the state funding, and yet people need raises and costs go up, right? I mean, that's the reality that we're facing. You can't just, because your point earlier, raise my taxes, that's where I want to live. Yeah. It's not so easy to just make that decision as a city councilman, I'm assuming?
Probably
yes
not.
and no.
Okay.
So, I mean, when you go door to door and say, here, sign my nomination papers, or what do you want me to do? How am I running the city? So keep my taxes low. People, that's the off-the-cuff response everybody gives you. But so the state referendum limit, the levy limits that the state puts on, just simply says if you go above this limit, you have to ask and people have to vote on it. It sounds simple, but it's what we did.
Yeah. And people voted yes.
The mayor and the council elected to put a 5-year limit on it instead of saying this goes on in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And say we're going to see what we can do to work with the formulas we have and the land's possible development that we have available to reconcile this after 5 years.
Give us 5 years to work on it, see if we can find a fix.
That's what a lot of this is, and then maybe going through this, maybe some people voted for the referendum knowing it was capped, and we're going to see if we can go back to the state levy limit that was established. But maybe some people are like, you know what, hey, you guys worked, changing land use causes more anguish than asking us for more money, so just charge us more money and leave it alone.
Yeah.
So I mean that might be the end of this effort. So
Yeah.
that's part of the reason I said I know this resolution wasn't ready to vote on tonight.
No.
No.
But
We asked to have it put in a resolution format just so we
I know.
had clear words to work with.
This is a good conversation
I
from my
know.
perspective. I've learned a lot, and I think it's been good.
But I think that our lack of action or just staying the course and trying to tune this to an acceptable, something that might be acceptable is being perceived as not listening to any of the concerns, and that's not what it is. It's, that's why I said let's get it in a resolution. Maybe we should vote on it and say we're done. We can't do it. But I'd like to see it tuned to something that could possibly be a land use that we can lock arms with and agree to and say, should development come, this is what.
Why don't we
These are
take
the
a
very
step?
high level parameters.
These are the parameters.
Not
We'll
changing
accept-
zoning, not
accept
approving site plans.
I think it's better than waiting for individual properties to have development proposals come one at a time because we won't get the infrastructure that we're trying to lay out with something like this.
That I agree with you 100%. What maybe just a suggestion? Can we? I don't know who would do it. Maybe the staff. Can we try and rewrite the map to be more of a north-south corridor with residential here, and maybe start to focus on that to get people more aware and more comfortable with the direction? Is that a way to go?
Good.
We can have that done by the next meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a suggestion. I'm not saying it's the answer. I'm just throwing out an idea.
So I've been saying that the last couple meetings that maybe you want to start with the map, but I wouldn't put that on staff because again, then we just keep coming back here without enough information. I actually think putting a narrow strip, that affects the people on Campbell Trace more than anything, and I think, in my opinion, but I would recommend a small group of people sit down and help with a map amendment. We need specific recommendations, otherwise it doesn't
Maybe
go
an A,
anywhere.
B, and C.
I mean, we have residents that expressed an interest. You can't get a consensus of everything. We all know that, but it sounds like there was a couple leaders in the area that would want to be part of some group that would take a stab at it, right?
Yeah. Since it was citizens who started this, pretty much. And developers.
It's just hard to then manage that process.
I do also want to point out, because that has come up a couple times, that there's developers in the group. There were 2 developers in the group. Just to be clear, John Seatman did abstain from voting in this particular area. He was a very valuable part of the committee in the fact that he taught the entire group what a conservation PUD was. And having experts in the field, same with this project, I have reached out to a couple of industrial brokers or business park brokers because we have to understand what their business model is in order to pursue this. If we put something together that makes no sense, then what is the point in the first place? So having John Kemen from Hendricks was on the group, and John Seatman as a developer were on the group. They were the two members that were not residents. The rest of the members were all residents from various districts in the city. And they did provide valuable information on market conditions, what to expect. Hendricks has, significant interest in the downtown area, and they were able to help understand conditions. Same with John Seatman. So
yeah, Amy, I'll say
that's why it's important to have a diverse group of backgrounds and expertise, and that's where they came into play.
Yeah, and I'll say for the record, I moved into Delafield about 3 years ago, so I knew none of you. Before that, one of my neighbors was on that, and what I watched was very professional, very logical, getting a cross section. So I've seen some of the comments on social media and some of the comments here about that crazy stuff like follow the money, that I will just say as somebody that's not been here for 20 years, and I've been impressed by what all of you started and what you've been doing. So, from my standpoint, congratulations on that, because I think some of those comments were just misinformed.
Yeah, the committee was just for what ifs, what could you do? It wasn't saying this is what you should do or just do it.
I would consider it a starting point, and there was a comment about that being a short period of time, and that, in the past, a comprehensive amendment has taken much longer. But that was the starting point, our process has taken this whole year. We're breaking it. It's actually very transparent and community focused in the fact that each area is being considered individually and on its own. And all of the controversial areas have had multiple meetings with public input. So I would consider it very transparent, more so than quite frankly, any other community that I've worked for. So right now, I have been given direction to define a specific buffer, identify the right-of-way and available access points from Department of Transportation, and then define the area of uses, which I guess I just need a little more direction on that, on who would be involved in helping determine a refined area.
What would you need
Well,
to be a good working partner in defining this?
I think it would be helpful to at least have one plan commissioner and maybe one common council member on the group. And then if you want to include public participation, maybe 2 or 3 public participants, and sit down and kind of do what we did in downtown. The recommendations from if it were to include public participants, I think it needs to be understood. The consideration is, where does that, first of all, the business park area will be determined whether or not it's doable or not down the road. But I think the idea is right now is to keep that in there and refine the zone. So if the recommendation, which was submitted by many of the public, to not have it at all and leave it low density residential, I don't think you're going to get the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's up,
the resident
that's up
that
to you.
sent a map 2 meetings ago. Was that all residential?
Yes.
It was.
And they did refer to it as medium density residential, but I believe, I don't have it in front of me, I believe the medium density meant 1 acre, which in the city's land use plan is low density residential. So they had it ranging from 1 acre to 3 acre residential.
Okay. That's why I was going back to the developer idea, because I know, like, if I volunteered to help, I would make comments about how to draw the map that would be not feasible, because I don't know. I'm not a developer.
Right. It would be very helpful to have a developer. I know that comes off as being, favoring a group, but without that expertise, it's pretty hard to make decisions.
Right.
And that's how it was why it was originally drawn to be a flexible boundary, because really, until you start drawing out a development, you're probably not going to get it right. There's sewer lines, there's topography, there's water issues, there's soils, there's natural resources. There's a lot of considerations that are made in the development process. The buffers.
I mean, a developer will very quickly go through $50,000 just for a preliminary drawing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, if you're looking for all that detail.
I mean,
Where
that's just to get
Land
started,
use plan is
right?
not supposed to be so detailed, correct?
Right.
We're trying to draw some lines in there, and then later you would get more into all that detail. And whatever line we do draw, if we draw one parallel to Highway 83, most likely it's going to change. And it might get offset here and there.
I would just think, there's this concept of doing, I think you have to decide, do you prefer a narrow strip or the development up by the railroad tracks behind the farmstead, assuming it's the Morris farm, that whenever they sell it for, if they ever sold it, for one, for another use, that large farmstead piece that is on 80 along that area would probably be part of it.
And then the rest.
Then it's
maybe
actually,
residential.
you're actually tucking it. I just think if you send the cul-de-sac north, you're tucking it away more than putting it right on 83 where there
I
are
agree.
residences.
It lends
And that's why I
itself to
believe that focus group created that boundary the way they did. They liked it up against the railroad tracks.
And the forest to ULS.
The business park side of it.
Right.
The business park. And then you,
Where
all
there
the residential.
were little to no neighbors, right?
Yeah.
Other than the corner hill of Campbell Trace, which needs some work, in my opinion, right? I mean, that's the only place I see on that map where it isn't residential budding to residential. It's about, I don't know, I can't tell by the map, but maybe a football field's length that actually commercial touches. Otherwise, it's residential in every other situation.
Is there any chance a golf community developer would see that as if you did the business park up in that area, so it's tucked away, and then everything south of that, you did residential, like a golf. I don't know how much a golf course takes in acreage or.
Yeah.
Mike, do you want golf fertilizer?
We're getting rid of
I'm actually pretty bad at it.
We're getting
so
rid of a golf course
not,
in this town. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the way this language is written, residential is an option, and I mean the golf course would have to be something.
Yeah.
Golf courses can have challenges too.
Yeah,
To land
absolutely.
use.
Yeah,
Very expensive.
very expensive. You can't play it. You're
A business park, the kind of business park you're proposing in here would be far less intense as far as people coming and going,
True.
and environmental impacts than I would think compared to a golf course. But
yeah, golf course, they dump a lot of fertilizer.
I go back to what I said before. Unfortunately, if we would approve a mixed land use, all we're doing is now giving developers a signal, come talk to us. This is no longer just agriculture.
That's really what it is.
That's the basics. But unfortunately, and I understand why. If I was on the other side of the equation, I would not know, that it's going to be followed through with what we're verbally saying today.
Well, that's what this document's for, is to
Well-
make sure we follow these rules.
yeah, I mean
At a
that's
high
where
level.
if I think for one you have to start with, are the uses reasonable or not for the area? And if you really think that they're reasonable uses, then you just keep refining this special language, which is above and beyond what is often found in a land use plan. So there's quite a bit of language in here, which you can add to it if you want to. But I think you have to start with, is it the right direction? And if so, then continue this and refine that map if you so choose to. I would just be cautious about a strip on 83.
All right, so if I can just go back to this document here, just for some clarification on one thing, just to move an action item forward. We have institutional on this list under Exhibit A, and I think that we had talked at the last meeting that kind of, was not kind of the focus of trying to raise, revenue from the development, that we would agree to remove that from the list of allowable uses. Is there a consensus here that we should remove?
So the items I have in
Institutional
red are changes that I added since the last meeting that we should probably touch on. So that would be one of them. Institutional was brought up. You have quite a bit of institutional land in the city that's tax exempt.
The proposed school that was going to go in there a while back got drummed out of town. So, I mean, I don't know why.
But they still own all that land.
I don't know why
up
it'd be
there.
welcomed right
One
now.
of the biggest chunks of land is owned by an institutional entity.
Bob, Ed, Mike, any of you guys want institutional to remain?
No.
The other thing here in red is retail that is incidental to otherwise permitted uses. Is that strict enough for you on retail? Or do you think it should be more strict, just simply no retail?
Give an example.
Rustic Manor.
Well, I think, yeah.
Well, they don't want to call it
Yes.
retail.
I think at the last meeting, it was brought up, like, what if the gummy bear place on Kettle Court East came in and they happened to have a little showroom of their gummy bears? Would that be incidental? I think that was the example that was used.
You've got a gift shop inside a clinic or something.
Okay.
Or maybe a cheese store or manufacturer, and they got a little shop in front.
I go to those.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
It's incidental to their
Well, I
main
think
work.
people should understand. Give an example.
So are we good then as a group
Yeah.
with leaving in retail that is incidental to otherwise permitted uses? Then the other one here in red is limited distribution and warehousing. Tricky.
Yeah.
I don't think you could say, you could say, but I think it would be pretty tough to say no distribution.
But if that's
or
the
warehousing.
primary function, that just implies trucks and a lot
Right,
of-
because we definitely don't want heavy truck traffic. We want low truck
Distribution is your
traffic.
main
So,
business.
That's why we
If
thought
it's-
maybe the word limited, or that's kind of what we talked about last time, helped to.
Yeah, so for me, I would take out light manufacturing and limited distribution. I would not accept those.
go
I'm
ahead.
telling you, I've worked for a
I
light
know.
manufacturer forever, and it's like a church.
Well, it just
I mean,
says light
it's really
distribution
just-
and warehousing. It doesn't say manufacturing.
So I think that was Nicole's point in her presentation was, if you allow light manufacturing and you exclude distributing, that makes it very limiting because you're manufacturing something that cannot then be distributed off-site.
Exactly.
And that a lot of these uses are so low-key and have such little traffic. You know, again, I think some of the pictures and images were coming from Oak Creek. Well, that's really close to the airport on a major interstate, and that has a different desire. The different uses are desired there compared to here. And it was her understanding that the uses that would be more desirable in this area would be those high-tech, low-employee, low-traffic count uses, but that if distribution was prohibited, a developer would have a hard time spending the money and investing on a development that would be so tight.
I'm just saying the workforce to do that work is not here. And I don't picture people
That's a good point.
living on the south side of Waukesha driving to Delafield to do assembly work. I don't see it.
That's a good point.
I mean, I think you might be surprised.
I think
You
what
know?
she was referring to is automation, like automation type
It's the
uses, where
same thing.
might have like 5 to 11 employees. You have very few employees. It's more automation than anything.
But they're still making a product
It's
that
the
has
same
to be
thing. It's the
shipped
same
out.
degree of skill set and pay. You're going to be pulling from Waukesha, the city of. You're not going to be pulling from, Merton.
What do you mean by
easily could
skill
be.
set and pay? Because I think
Don't-
they're
what I'm saying
largely
is don't
engineers.
shut the door thinking that everybody here has a high six-figure year salary.
No, I'm
there's
not.
plenty of blue-collar people in this Waukesha County, including out in this neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So, people need jobs, and if think about it, if they're going to live in Dousman, let's say, and drive 15 minutes here as opposed to driving 45 minutes, they're going to come here.
Yeah.
Or Ixonia. Or,
I mean, there's a lot.
It's hard to say. I don't think we can get too wrapped up on that.
Right.
Okay.
But manufacturing comes distribution, and that's trucks.
And
I
that's,
mean,
that's why I think we talked about last
it's not
time.
one truck a week. It's
Putting the word limited in there. Again, it's a guideline. It doesn't, we're case by case when the individual places were to come in, right? But as a guideline, is that something that we can live with the word limited? Or a different word, or none?
Do we define what limited means then when they come to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Then I would say leave it in.
That's
So,
obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in all seriousness, this is our trigger to watch that carefully, and there's other text in here that would indicate that we need to look at it. None of it's zoned appropriately. Everything would need to be rezoned. Everything would require a public hearing. The public would be invited back to review a specific development request. And during that rezone and development review, that's when you get specific. You know, maybe it does come down to the number of stories in the building, the number of overhead doors, or that could be your indicator that it's too intense. The amount of landscaping, the amount of buffering, parking. If you put that kind of detail in here, I mean, every time somebody wants to make a change, that you're going back to a vision document, not.
Right.
Typically doesn't include the detailed technical aspects for review.
So, I mean, a lot of this already reads like zoning.
It's pretty technical already.
Yeah.
But this is the document
But
where
the-
the
but
public
we-
can
we-
come back
we-
and say,
we-
but you guys did this. You spent 4 meetings doing this. Don't screw it up.
But it's more than usual because we're trying to be restrictive,
Yeah.
right? It's not zoning, but we are purposely trying to be restrictive here, right?
But now, why are we doing this right now? Because we want to pass this, or are we going to do a map revision?
No, we're doing that too. I'm just trying, this was the action item
Yeah,
from our last meeting, so I'm just trying to get clarity so they're not hanging chads. We can move on to the next things that we've asked to have ready for the next meeting. This is what we asked to have for this meeting.
I mean, the good news by putting all that in, that gives you all the rights later on to say, nope, that's not limited manufacturing.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So,
Yeah, I would leave it in.
Okay, so
Emphasis limited.
does the majority agree with Ed? Leave
Yeah.
it in for, at least for now?
For now.
yep.
Then.
We're running out of video. We're getting
Okay,
more needs.
before the next meeting, so there'll be a revised special use area language. I would assume we'll have updated maps. I didn't really get a whole lot of direction on that. And then some of this other information. I would just really urge you, if you don't read the packets carefully before coming to the meeting, to read the packet carefully and have your thoughts organized so we can keep this conversation going one way or another. I've already read through the details at the last 3 meetings, so I will probably next time say what needs to be changed, okay? I want to make sure everybody hears where we're coming from so far, but I think we can get more specific.
So the struggle is the map, just refining the map.
We're
How do we
going to
do
talk
that?
about that at the staff meeting tomorrow and see if we can come up with a plan.
Okay.
But one way or another, we'll do our best to get something here
Yeah.
for the next meeting.
Great.
As far as things that are prohibited, I went through this list, and one thing I'd like to see added, just to be specific about it, so there's no doubt that it's not to be considered, and that's fast food. I didn't know that the word restaurant necessarily captured that, and I wanted your guys' opinion on adding fast food as to prohibited uses.
Yes.
Yes.
Those of us who deal in the quick service restaurant business would take offense at that.
Quick.
Okay, so Amy, any other clarification on this topic that you need? This is a new commitment I have to Amy to make sure we've got everything as clarified as we can.
No, in the next meeting, we will have the cost of community services scenario study as included in the packet too. That'll be interesting to see what that shows.
The only other thing I would say as you work on the map with the staff is it sounds like, and I hate to give a percentage, but it sounds like there's a momentum to be more residential than business. I don't know what that percentage is, but as we think about this piece of property, maybe contemplate that. How much is residential versus how much is business park percentage-wise?
Okay, anything else? All right, then we will move on to 12? 12A. Okay. Planning, report of city officials, planning commission meeting dates and deadlines. Regular meeting will be November 30th, 2022. Oh, that's my birthday. 2 regular meetings, submittal deadline, November 2nd, 2022. 3, discussion and possible action regarding changing the December 28th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. This is something we traditionally do because the week between Christmas and New Year's is usually a very difficult time for commissioners to attend as well as citizens. So normally what we do is move it up a week and have it the Wednesday 1 week earlier.
Sounds good.
Yep.
21st,
Yeah, I don't have a calendar in front of me if that's the Wednesday.
December 21st.
December 21st.
Okay,
Can I
21st?
just, before we get too settled on that, and I think I was gonna do a math and got distracted, and I apologize for that. Let me just verify that the room is available.
And the deadline can stay the same. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'd be the 21st.